The House will come to order. The Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Representative Titone.
Please join me in the pledge.
Mr. Schiebel, please call the roll.
Representatives Bacon, Barone, Basenecker, Bottoms, Bradfield, Bradley, Brooks, Brown, Representative Brown is excused. Caldwell, Camacho, Carter, Clifford, DeGraff, Duran, English, Representative English is excused. Espinoza, Foray, Flanell, Froelich, Garcia, Garcia-Sander, Gilchrist, Goldstein, Gonzalez, Hamrick, Representative Hamrick, Hartsook, Jackson, Johnson, Joseph, Kelty, Leader, Lindsay,
Here.
Luck, Representative Luck is excused. Lukens, Mabry, Representative Mabry is excused. Marshall, no, Rep. Marshall's excused. Martinez, Morrow, McCormick, Wynn, Pascal, Phillips, Richardson, Ricks. Representative Ricks is excused. Rootnell.
Here.
Ryden. Sirota. Slaw. Smith. Soper. Stewart K. Stewart R. Story. Sukla. Taggart. Titone. Right there. Valdez A. Representative Valdez is excused. Velasco. Weinberg.
Present.
Wilford. Winter. Woodrow. Woog. Zokai. And Madam Speaker.
Here. With 58 present, 7 excused, we do have a quorum. Representative Titone.
Madam Speaker, I move that the Journal of April 15th, 2026 be approved as corrected by the Chief Clerk.
Thank you, Representative. Members, you have heard the motion that the journal be approved as corrected by the Chief Clerk. All those in favor say aye. Thank you. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted. Sleepy today. Announcements and introductions. Representative Leader.
Good morning, colleagues.
Good morning.
Got quiet. I would just like to recognize the Sheet Metal Air and Rail Transportation Division over here. Please stand. And then we have one up in the gallery. Please welcome them in. These are the people that run your railroads and get you where you're going safely without AI. So, colleagues, the state of Colorado's economy, environment, and communities rely on a safe, efficient, and robust railway system for the transport of goods and materials across the state. The dedicated employees of the railroad industry, including engineers, conductors, maintenance of way, crews, and other essential personnel, are the backbone of this critical infrastructure. According to the national data on duty, railroad employees' fatalities and injuries continue to be a significant concern, with transportation incidents consistently ranking among the leading causes of work-related deaths nationwide. The safety of railroad workers requires ongoing and focused attention to address persistent risks, including those related to fatigue, inadequate staffing levels, and the lack of comprehensive protections for employees who report workplace safety hazards and concerns. A proactive and collaborative approach among state regulatory bodies, railroad companies, and labor organizations is essential to preventing injuries and fatalities while ensuring that every worker returns home safely. The Colorado House of Representatives reaffirms its commitment to the safety and well-being of all Colorado railroad workers. Thank you, and please give them another big round of applause.
Majority Leader Duran.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today in the gallery with us, I want to recognize some members from LiUNA Local 720 who came down for the day at the Capitol. LiUNA Local 720 plays a big role advocating for our construction workers in this state and does a wonderful job ensuring our workers are represented. Members, please join me in recognizing them, and if I can ask them to stand in the gallery. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative DeGraff.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This morning, colleagues, I'd like to introduce Colorado West Christian Schools from Montrose. Over here on the side, if you'll stand up, they've been brought in today by my friend from Germany from 15 years ago. I probably shouldn't have said that so loud, but Dr. Tim Dieter. So we go way back to being stationed in Ramstein together. So welcome to the Colorado West Christian Schools. Thanks for joining us.
Representative Lukens.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The House Education Committee will be meeting 10 minutes upon adjournment of the Upon Adjournment Committee, or at 1:30, and we will be hearing Senate Bill 19, House Bill 1264, Senate Bill 103, or House Bill 1335.
Representative Woodrow.
Good morning, Madam Speaker. It's an honor to serve with you.
It is an honor to serve with you.
Colleagues, House Finance Committee will be meeting 10 minutes upon adjournment of our business here on the floor, 10 minutes upon adjournment in room 112 to hear two bills, House Bill 26-1346 and House Bill 26-1119. Testimony, given the number of witnesses, will be limited to 2 minutes with 7-minute panels. See you there.
Thank you. Representative Slaw.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, today is Religious Freedom Day here at the Capitol, sponsored by the Interfaith Alliance, and I would like to thank Sister Washington for her prayer this morning, who is a member of my church from Commerce City. I'd also like to thank Rep. Ryden for announcing yesterday and passing out the flyers for today's occasion. In our faith, we believe we are all brothers and sisters, and we state, we're all brothers and sisters. In our church's articles of faith, among many other beliefs, we state, we claim the privilege of worshiping Almighty God according to the dictates of our conscience, and allow all men the same privilege. Let them worship how, where, or what they may. Our nation was founded on, among other things, religious liberty, and it must be protected in all we do. We invite you to join us for a lunch in the foyer during lunchtime today. Thank you.
Thank you. Minority Leader Caldwell.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members that are not here yet, but the Pikes Peak School of Expeditionary Learning from Falcon, Colorado, and House District 20 will be here today. You will not be able to miss them because there's over 100 of them. They're going to be in our gallery sometime between 10:30 and 12. So please make sure when you see them come in, you give them a wave. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Representative Wilford.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. No State Civic Military Veterans Affairs Committee today. Yay.
Thank you. Representative Joseph.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Capitol Choir, please come down. Capitol Choir, join us. It's Representative Marshall's birthday. Tomorrow's Representative Brown's, and we also did have a couple of our staffers, Elizabeth and also Jacqueline's birthday last week. So please come down, Representative Bob and everybody, Representative Marshall and everyone, please. Birthday, yes, Capitol Choir. Yes.
Singers.
For you, you're the only one with the throne at this moment, Representative. All right, 1, 2. We'll sing for Representative Brown and his absentia. 1, 2, 3. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Bob. Happy birthday to you.
Minority Leader Caldwell.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Since we're doing birthdays today, I just want to recognize my Chief of Staff, Kimberly, as it is her birthday today, so please make sure you tell her happy birthday when you see her.
Representative Soper.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, we have some exciting news to share with everyone today. A town in our neck of the woods, Palisade, Colorado, was named by USA Today as America's #1 small town. And that's not just because they have 30 wineries or 2,400 acres of peaches and happen to have the best farmers market in all of Colorado, but it's also because they have great places to ride your bike, and in a good snow year, great places to raft the Colorado River, spectacular views of the Book Cliff Mountains, and a town that looks like a Hallmark movie set.
True. Representative Taggart.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's a pleasure to work with you.
It is a pleasure to work with you.
I just want to remind everybody, I know you think it's 8 hours to the western slope of Colorado. To Palisade, Colorado, it's a little bit less than 4 hours. It's worth your drive, but you're not welcome to live out there with us.
I love it. Representative Brown.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Tomorrow morning at 8:15 in the Old State Library, the Appropriations Committee will meet. We will hear the following bills in the following order: 1028, 1075, 1078, 1227, 1287, 1298, 1307, 1317, and 1338. And even though it is printed in your calendar, 1206 will be laid over until a future appropriations meeting.
Thank you. Members, we are proceeding to business. Please take your seats. Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move to proceed out of order for consideration of resolutions.
Seeing no objection, we will proceed out of order for consideration of resolutions. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title to Senate Joint Resolution 18.
Senate Joint Resolution 18 by Senator Judah, also Representative Zokai, concerning recognizing the celebration of Nowruz and in connection therewith expressing support for the human rights and fundamental freedoms of the Iranian people, including the ongoing struggle for equality embodied in the Women Life Freedom Movement.
Representative Zokai.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move Senate Joint Resolution 18 and ask that it be read at length.
Mr. Schiebel, please read our resolution.
Whereas Nowruz, meaning New Day, is the traditional Iranian New Year celebrated on the spring equinox and marks the beginning of the year of the Persian calendar, a holiday observed for more than 3,000 years by hundreds of millions of people across Iran, Central Asia, the Middle East, and the diaspora of Middle Eastern communities around the world. And whereas Iranian Americans and members of the Iranian diaspora, including many Coloradans, celebrate Nowruz and contribute greatly to the cultural, economic, and civic life of communities across the United States and the state of Colorado. And whereas Nowruz is a celebration of renewal, hope, and the rebirth of nature, symbolizing the promise that each new year can bring great peace, prosperity, and justice. And whereas the people of Iran continue to face profound challenges to their fundamental civil and human rights, including restrictions on freedom of expression, freedom of assembly, freedom of religion, and equality under the law. And whereas the Women Life Freedom movement that began in September 2022 has become a global call for gender equality, human dignity, and fundamental civil rights, highlighting long-standing discrimination against women and girls in Iran, including legal inequality and restrictions on personal freedom, and reflecting the extraordinary courage of Iranian women and girls who demand equality and bodily autonomy. And whereas students, journalists, activists, workers, and ordinary citizens across Iran have risked their safety and their lives in peaceful demonstrations, demanding democratic freedoms, bodily autonomy, and basic civil rights, even as escalating conflict and violence in the region have placed millions of civilians at risk and caused devastating harm to families and communities. And whereas the Colorado General Assembly recognizes Nowruz as a celebration of renewal, resilience, and hope for Middle Eastern communities across Colorado and the world. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Senate of the 75th General Assembly of the State of Colorado, the House of Representatives concurring herein, that the Colorado General Assembly recognizes the celebration of Nowruz and extends its warmest wishes for a year of renewal, hope, and peace to Iranian communities in Colorado and around the world, affirms its solidarity with the Iranian people in their ongoing struggle for fundamental civil rights, democratic freedoms, and equality under the law, recognizes the courage and leadership of Iranian women and girls and the global call for dignity embodied in the words, women, life, freedom, mourns the lives of civilians, especially children, lost to violence and war, calling for the protection of civilians, schools, and essential community institutions, and expresses its hopes that the spirit of Nowruz, a new day, will bring a future in which all people of Iran can live with equality, freedom, justice, and the full protection of their civil and human rights.
Representative Zokai.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and members, please be seated. Thank you. And Eid Shoma Mubarak. Happy New Year. We are a bit late in bringing this resolution forward, but we wanted to make sure to still recognize this important holiday. Nowruz means a new day, and it is a holiday celebrating renewal, rebirth, and resilience. Originating in Iran over 3,000 years ago, Nowruz is now celebrated across the world, uniting the Persian diaspora across different faiths, ethnicities, and nationalities. And it is a holiday that has a lot of personal meaning and importance for me. Nowruz is a time where we start our lives anew. It isn't just ringing in the new year, it is a celebration over the course of 13 days. We clean our homes, we buy new clothes, we exchange gifts, we set a hafsin, which is a table with symbolic items, and we visit friends and family. And not just the friends and family that you might typically get together with, but it is a time to intentionally go and visit everyone in your community. And that might also mean people you're not particularly excited to see as well, because part of Nowruz is not just celebrating a renewal of life, but of friendships as well. People end their animosity and visit one another with a renewed hope, which is something I think we could all use a bit more of in this building. Now, this year, of course, did feel different. And I will say I struggled to find a sense of how to bring this resolution forward this year. Most of the text of this resolution was written before Iranians were facing a war. Senator Judah and I had talked about taking Nowruz this year as a time to recognize the struggles of Iranian people and especially of Iranian women who have led the largest women's rights movement in recent history. The women and girls of Iran called out for Zan Zendegi Azadi, woman, life, freedom. And they were faced with brutality from their government, and they continued to show up in the face of repression and violence and risk their lives for a future with civil rights and economic opportunity. And we wanted to take this Nowruz to recognize their resilience and their power because it deserves recognition. But when we talk about the power of Iranian girls, I cannot gloss over the fact that a little over 40 days ago, the lives of over 150 little girls was lost when the United States bombed an elementary school. When I talk about renewal and rebirth this Nowruz, I cannot ignore that literal black rain fell over Tehran from strikes on oil depots and refineries, causing hazardous air and potential lifelong health risks for Iranians. And when I talk about this Nowruz, I have to mention that it was spent with cousins who did not know if their parents were alive. that it was spent with family members asking us where they should go to be safe with threats of escalating attacks, with a pregnant family member not knowing where she would deliver her baby when the hospital was bombed, with kids traumatized by their walls shaking, with us not knowing if a family member in the hospital in Iran would pass away because the electricity would be cut off as our president threatened to attack civilian infrastructure. Members, I am not trying to politicize a holiday or detract from the message of hope that underlies Nowruz. But as the only Iranian member of this body and one of just a handful of Iranian elected officials across the country, I feel an immense pressure to represent the truth of how my family and many other Iranian families are experiencing this holiday. And the truth for me is that this role is incredibly lonely and isolating. And I have done my best to show up here and advocate for all Coloradans, despite my own uncertainty and fear about the well-being of my family. And I just want to take that human moment to share that with all of you, because thank you. I have felt stuck showing up here to do this job, which is not foreign policy, at a time where foreign policy is deeply personal and the matter of life or death for people that I love. And despite being in the middle of a war that impacts me every second, while the President of the United States is threatening to eradicate an entire civilization, the world in here does go on, and our work does continue. And so for me, what this comes down to is that this Nowruz, we cannot celebrate renewal, rebirth, and resilience passively, but instead we must make an active commitment to embody those values in our policymaking. And so I'm asking us to commit to renew on calls for peace and justice for all Iranians, including the members of the Women Life Freedom Movement who are fighting for their most basic rights against an oppressive regime and whose struggle is in no way helped by American bombs. I am asking us to commit to a rebirth of foreign policy that rejects endless wars and instead ushers in a new era of diplomacy. I'm asking us to commit to celebrating the resilience of Iranian culture by protecting that culture from those who threaten to drive it to extinction. And above all, I'm asking us to remember the humanity of Iranians everywhere, especially those who have one less family members with them this new year. Nowruz reminds us that no matter how dark things are, the light always comes. No matter how many flowers may be cut down, it cannot stop the spring. I asked my family members if they have a message to share. And they said, we hope that after all this Nowruz, all wars end and peace and prosperity returns to everyone on planet Earth. And I could not have said that better myself. Thank you, members. I urge and I vote.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before us is the adoption of Senate Joint Resolution 18. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representative Lindsay, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Lindsay votes yes. Representative Rupnell, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Rupnell votes yes. Representative Weinberg, how do you vote?
Yes, ma'am.
Representative Weinberg votes yes. Please close the machine. With 59 aye, 2 no, 4 excuse, Senate Joint Resolution 18 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Representative Rupnell and Lindsay, co-sponsor. Please close the machine. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move for House Bill 1245 to be removed from the special orders calendar and placed back on the general orders second reading calendar.
Seeing no objection, House Bill 1245 will be removed from special orders and returned to general orders second reading calendar. Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move the following bills be made special orders on April 16th, 2026 at 9:35 a.m. House Bill 1290, House Bill 1312, and House Bill 1321.
Seeing no objection, the bills listed by the Majority Leader will be made special orders today at 9:35 a.m. Representative Lukens. Members, you have heard the motion. Seeing no objection, Representative Lukens will take the chair.
The committee will come to order. With your unanimous consent, the bills will be read by title unless there is a request for reading a bill at length. Committee reports are printed in your bill folders. Floor amendments will be shown on the screen on iLegislate and in today's folder on your box account. Bills will be laid over upon motion of the Majority Leader, and the coat rule is relaxed. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title of House Bill 1290.
House Bill 1290 by Representatives Hartsock and Duran concerning the criminal offense of assault and in connection therewith changing the requirements to commit assault against certain public servants and medical care providers and clarifying sentencing.
Majority Leader Duran.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move House Bill 1290 and the Judiciary Committee report.
To the committee report.
In Judiciary, we ran amendments to remove the medical professional piece and just to make changes to the second degree assault for any persons, and I ask for a yes vote.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of the Judiciary report. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The Judiciary report passes. To the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to say that I am honored to stand here with Representative Hartsock on a bill that centers around something that we don't talk about enough, but that lives quietly in too many homes across Colorado are impacted. The reality of strangulation and the survivors who carry its impact long after the moment has passed. Many of you know my story. I'm a survivor of domestic violence, and I'm one of the ones who made it out. And I carry that truth with me every day. The data makes it clear. According to the 2025 Domestic Violence Fatality Review in 2024, there were 54 cases that resulted in 72 deaths. 38 were intimate partners. 8 were innocent collateral victims. While overall homicides in Colorado declined, domestic violence fatalities rose more than 20%. Nearly 1 in 5 homicides in our state is tied to domestic violence. That's not a statistic. That is a warning. And one of the clearest warning signs we see over and over again is strangulation. Non-fatal strangulation is not a minor assault. It is near homicide. It is near homicide events. It is the moment where life is almost taken, even if the outside world can't see it. A person can lose consciousness in seconds. Brain injury can begin in under a minute. Oxygen is cut off. Blood flow is interrupted, and yet in many cases there are no visible marks. And we have to say this clearly, for victims with darker skin, those markings are even harder to detect. Too often their injuries are overlooked, dismissed, and not believed because the harm is not easily seen. But the damage is real, the risk is real, and the danger does not fade just because it's invisible. Survivors may walk away, but days, weeks later, they could suffer a stroke, a seizure, or fatal complications. Memory gaps caused by oxygen loss can make it harder to report. The system can miss it, and when the system misses it, we lose the opportunity to intervene. This bill will close that gap, and I ask for a yes vote.
Rep. Hartsook.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In most incidences of violence, there's very distinctive marks. If there's accidents, there's very distinctive marks. There's broken bones. There's gunshot wounds. There's knife wounds. You can see the blood. Strangulation is a very intimate, very direct, very lethal attack, yet seldom leaves identifiable marks. But it leaves long, lasting impacts. Domestic violence victims are 750% more likely the second time around to result in a homicide. I would submit to you that we need to curb this and deal with it in the beginning of strangulation and not wait until we are taking a trial for homicide. We urge an aye vote. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of House Bill 1290. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 1290 passes. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title of House Bill 1312.
House Bill 1312 by Representative Clifford, also Senator Mullica, concerning measures related to peace officer participation in matters related to peace officer performance and in connection therewith, requiring the Attorney General to submit a proposal to update law enforcement academy training programs, changing the composition of the post board, requiring a person to be 21 years or older to pass post board examinations for certification, and authorizing a peace officer academy staff person to be eligible to receive training or grants for training offered by any state or local entity.
Rep. Clifford.
That is a title. Thank you, Madam Chair. I move House Bill 1312 and the Judiciary Committee report.
To the Judiciary report.
In the Judiciary Committee, we did a strike below that didn't fully rewrite the bill, but basically created the bill as it is. So I will have you refer to that as the bill. And I urge an aye vote on the committee report.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of the committee report. All those in favor say aye. Oh.
Hold on. Oh, my goodness. It was not to the committee report, I thought. I thought we have voted on that. Can you make this amendment to the? Hold on just a second, everybody.
The committee will go into a brief recess.
Madam Chair, I withdraw the motion.
The motion has been withdrawn.
Madam Chair, I move L9 to the committee report.
And ask that it be properly displayed. One moment. Thank you.
My apologies, everybody. I did not notice that this was to the committee report. I thought we were amending the bill.
L9 is properly displayed. Rep. Clifford.
Thank you. So this is cleanup to make sure that we didn't unintentionally do something. We wanted to make sure that instructors that were hired, they can be suspended as long as that has gotten corrected and they've gotten themselves back in good standing and they have not been, disqualified by post, then that is fine with us. And then the other thing, we restricted certain post-grant funds for instructors of the community college law enforcement academies. We wanted to make sure that this did not restrict them from being able to get other grant funds that had nothing to do with what we were trying to restrict them from. So we added language here that says that this does not prohibit them from getting funds that are not post funds, just for clarity. And I request an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on L9? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of L9. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. L9 passes. Rep. Clifford.
Madam Chair, and now I urge an aye vote on the committee report as amended.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of the judiciary report as amended. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The judiciary report as amended passes. Rep. Clifford.
Thank you. To the bill, Madam Chair. And so this bill is, it does a few things for us. One, we've made a number of changes to the post board and its responsibilities since 2020. One of the things that has happened there is that we now leave it to the post board to handle disqualifying events. Most of you know the post board is not a regulatory agency, it's an oversight agency. So it's not licensure like the Board of Nursing or the Board of Medical Doctors or something like that. They are there primarily to ensure that minimum standards are met and maintained. And by and large, the agencies that hire peace officers are responsible for doing this work, and post oversees that it's happening. We made some changes in that where in certain instances police officers can be disqualified, and as a result we now need a more balanced board so that there is, quote unquote, a jury of your peers. Most of the disqualifying incidents are things that get debated on at the post board level for these things are related to people that are typically not the administrative personnel. So that is one particular piece. The other things that are relational here are related to the, there is a program that has been ongoing for, I believe we're in the 7th year of it, called the Academy Redesign Project. It is phenomenal. I am very proud of what Post has been doing. One of the things we have concerns about is, number one, getting it done and making sure that there's appropriate staffing to do that. We looked at ways to get Post more funding in order to be able to have them staff that with more staff to get this done by 2030. That is just not in the cards right now. One of the things that we have worked out with the Attorney General's office that they will do is bring this into a new training unit under the Attorney General that will allow them to staff this properly and get this work done. We are very proud of the work that they're doing there. We want to see it get complete, and that is one of the biggest nexus for the bills. As we were looking at that, we adjusted the post board accordingly to make sure that there is just a wide range of thought at that board. This is a very large board. We want them to be able to make effective decisions quickly. They meet 4 times a year, and as a result, this is what we came up with. And I request your aye vote.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of House Bill 1312. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 1312 passes. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title of House Bill 1321.
House Bill 1321 by Representative Stewart R. and Hamrick, also Senator Cutter, concerning modification of the School Security Disbursement Program.
Rep. Stewart.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move House Bill 1321 and the Education Committee report.
To the Education report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In the Education Committee, we thought that the timing of the grant disbursement was going to be affected by having a petition clause, so we added a safety clause. It turns out that actually that was probably the wrong move, so we are actually asking for a no vote on the Education Committee report to strike the safety clause and go back to a petition clause. So again, I'm asking for a no vote on the Education Committee.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of the Education Committee report. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no.
No.
The noes have it. The Education report is lost. To the bill. Rep. Stewart.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move L8 to House Bill 1321 and ask that it be properly displayed.
One moment. Thank you. L8 is properly displayed. Rep. Stewart.
Thank you, Madam Chair. L8 is reflective of a lot of the conversations that we had in the Education Committee, as well as some additional conversations with the Office of School Safety and the Office of Public Safety. It reflects some loosening of the requirements around organizations that provide, incidents response, violence prevention, and behavioral health. And we are changing the ands in that sentence on line 13 to be ors to provide a little bit more flexibility for organizations who may provide incident response and behavioral health, but not safety response, and vice versa. And let's see, we are also adding in a prioritization of organizations who are going to provide the services for free or low cost, but we are removing the requirement that the services be provided for free, and I would ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of L8. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. L8 passes. To the bill, Rep. Hamrick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This bill expands eligibility for program funds to nonprofit organizations that are based in Colorado. A nonprofit applying for grants must commit to providing its training to all local education providers, local law enforcement agencies, and other local first responders in the areas of incident response, violence prevention, or behavioral health. The bill also requires that the DPS disperse all grant money awarded for use in an upcoming school year no later than August 1st. And this simple refinement guarantees that public grant money serves the broad public good through inclusive, high-quality training that prioritizes both prevention and mental health. I respectfully ask for your aye vote on House Bill 26-1321 as amended.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of House Bill 1321 as amended. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 1321 as amended passes. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move the committee rise and report.
You've heard the motion. Seeing no objection, the committee will rise and report.
The House will come back to order. Mr. Schiebel, please read the report of the Committee of the Whole.
Madam Speaker, your Committee of the Whole begs leave to report as under consideration the following attached bills, being the second reading thereof, and makes the following recommendations thereon. House Bills 1290 as amended, 1312 as amended, and 1321 as amended, passed on second reading, ordered and grossed and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage.
The motion before us is the adoption of the Committee of the Whole report. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representative Lindsay, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Lindsay votes.
Yes.
Oh, I didn't. Sorry. Rep. Lindsay. One moment, please. Representative Lukens, would you please say our motion? Now we have the motion before us to adopt the report of the Committee of the Whole. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representative Lindsay, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Lindsay votes yes. Representative Weinberg, how do you vote?
No, ma'am.
Representative Weinberg votes no. Please, please close the machine. With 40 aye, 21 no, and 4 excused, the report of the Committee of the Whole is adopted. Members, we are proceeding to third reading. Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move to proceed out of order for third reading.
Seeing no objection, we will proceed out of order for third reading. Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move to lay over Senate Bill 43 until tomorrow.
Seeing no objection, Senate Bill 43 will be laid over until tomorrow. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title to House Bill 1233.
House Bill 1233 by Representatives Lukens and Zokai, also Senator Roberts, concerning property tax procedures for non-residential properties.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move to proceed out of, oh, sorry, let's back up here. Not enough coffee. Madam Speaker, I move House Bill 1233 on third reading and final passage.
The motion before us is the adoption of House Bill 1233 on third reading, final passage. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representative Lindsay, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Lindsay votes yes. Representative Weinberg, how do you vote?
No, ma'am.
Representative Weinberg votes no. Please close the machine. With 38 aye, 23 no, 4 excused, House Bill 1233 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Representative Lindsay, co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title to Senate Bill 128.
Senate Bill 128 by Senators Snyder and Kirkmeyer, also Representatives Lukens and Zokai, concerning a sales and use taxation exemption on certain fees charged by destination management companies.
Madam Majority Leader.
Excuse me. Madam Speaker, I move Senate Bill 128 on third reading and final passage.
The motion before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 128 on third reading, final passage. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representative Lindsay, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Lindsay votes yes. Representative Weinberg, how do you vote?
No, ma'am.
Representative Weinberg votes no. Please close the machine. With 46 aye, 15 no, and 4 excused, Senate Bill 128 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Shebel, please read the title to House Bill 1195.
House Bill 1195 by Representatives Rodden and Mabry, also Senators Mobley and Mullica, concerning restrictions on the use of artificial intelligence relating to psychotherapy services.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move House Bill 1195 on third reading and final passage.
The motion before us is the adoption of House Bill 1195 on third reading, final passage. Mr. Shebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representative Lindsay, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Lindsay votes yes. Representative Weinberg, how do you vote?
Yes, ma'am.
Representative Weinberg votes yes. Representative Rutnell, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Rutnell votes yes. Please close the machine. With 62 ayes, 0 no, and 3 excused, House Bill 1195 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Representative Lindsay, co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Shebel, please read the title to House Bill 1324.
House Bill 1324 by Representatives McCormick and Gilchrist, also Senator Doherty, concerning regulation of the Division of Professions and Occupations and in connection therewith, implementing recommendations contained in the 2025 Sunset Report by the Department of Regulatory Agencies.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move House Bill 1324 on third reading and final passage.
The motion before us is the adoption of House Bill 1324 on third reading, final passage. Mr. Shebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representative Lindsay, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Lindsay votes yes. Representative Weinberg, how do you vote?
No, ma'am.
Representative Weinberg votes no. Representative Rutnell, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Rutnell votes yes. DeGraff. Please close the machine. With 40 aye, 22 no, and 3 excused, House Bill 1324 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Representative Lindsay, co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Shebel, please read the title to House Bill 1235.
House Bill 1235 by Representative Ferre, also Senator Doherty, concerning updates to the Medical Assistance Program.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move House Bill 1235 on third reading and final passage.
The motion before us is the adoption of House Bill 1235 on third reading, final passage. Mr. Shebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representative Lindsay, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Lindsay votes yes. Representative Weinberg, how do you vote?
No, ma'am.
Representative Weinberg votes no. Representative Rutnell, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Rutnell votes yes. Please close the machine. With 44 aye, 18 no, and 3 excused, House Bill 1235 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Shebel, please read the title to House Bill 1288.
House Bill 1288 by Representatives Joseph and Carter, also Senators Roberts and Wallace, concerning measures related to jury selection.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move House Bill 1288 on third reading and final passage.
The motion before us is the adoption of House Bill 1288 on third reading, final passage. Mr. Shebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representative Lindsay, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Lindsay votes yes. Representative Weinberg, how do you vote?
No, ma'am.
Representative Weinberg votes no. Representative Rutenell, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Rutenell votes yes. Story. Please close the machine. With 52 aye, 10 no, and 3 excused, House Bill 1288 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Shebel, please read the title to House Bill 1224.
House Bill 1224 by Representatives Velasco and Basenecker, also Senators Cutter and Roberts, concerning financial protections for mobile home park residents.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move House Bill 1224 on third reading and final passage.
Representative DeGraff.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Colleagues, this room has got to get out of trying to intervene and fix every other problem that it has made. Maybe we need to spend some time unfixing the problems that you fixed prior. Everything is for sale. If somebody owns a piece of property, it's for sale. At some level, it's for sale. Now, I just saw a picture of a house at an airport in Narita where the taxiways go around it because they decided it wasn't for sale. But really, it was just not a sufficient offer hadn't been made. So we have regulations that are coming out of this room continuously that are forcing, and we know that are forcing individuals out of the rental space. They are having to get out. And now you want to put more bureaucracy in the middle of a contractual arrangement. Now, we should just let every mobile home park know that the rules that are being promulgated in here are really encouraging those small to sell and develop and turn into some sort of high-rise, which is obviously the preference in this. Basically stacking up more shipping containers in which we can house the citizens of Colorado. So this is what the citizens have, and the government is here to protect. The purpose of government is to secure these rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, to ensure that life, liberty, and property are not deprived without due process. And then we stick bureaucrats in the middle of this because, and I get it, I don't like the idea that somebody is going to be uprooted from a property that they've been on for a long time, but that's not going to be solved by putting a bureaucracy in the middle of a contractual arrangement. So I would encourage mobile home parks, the residents of those parks, to make an offer. To make their offer first. If they're interested in buying this property, they should do all of the things that are laid out in this bill. They should do in advance. And then they would have. Not expect that the property owner is just going to be sitting passively. Because if somebody comes to them and offers them a better price, it could be that they had that property as a means of, say, paying for their retirement. And if the only way, and at some point they're going to sell it, and they're going to sell it to the highest bidder. Unfortunately, based on the preference of the developer preference that has been promulgated in the rules out of this house, that is not going to be necessarily those people that are in that mobile home park, because the mobile home park is not going to be able to offset the cost with the number of mobile homes as they can if that property is developed, because now you've made it possible to skip all of the processes and then you can build high-density Calcutta style housing. So a mobile home park, by your rules, is not going to be able to compete if the people themselves want to maintain the property to which they become accustomed on living. And so now, after creating these rules, now after seeing the result of these mobile home parks probably selling to get out, and the property having an increased valuation because now they can bypass zoning, and they can build houses, they can build properties that are smaller, denser, and have none of the restrictions that they did before, which left the mobile home property in probably a lesser valuation. So now you've created the environment whereby these properties are worth more if somebody buys them, if somebody buys out a mobile home park. And now, because people are selling out because their property is worth more to build something besides a mobile home park, that people are selling to not be a mobile home park, and now you're upset. It seems like maybe there's some not happy with the results of the prior the unintended consequences, which aren't always unintended, but the unintended consequences are the displacement of mobile home parks. And so now the solution is to create the precedent where the government is now the arbiter, is now the referee in this sale. So this, I think, is this need for the bill is a result from, specifically, prior legislation in the same vein that was meant to solve housing, and now here we are. Now you're displacing the people and now you come back and say we want to help them, and what's your help? Is it creating a better market? Is it lowering the price of housing? No. You still have things like asbestos. You have regulation. We just added regulation that's going to add $25,000 per property. That doesn't make property more affordable for these individuals. We have the asbestos regulations that we could get rid of, but are going to cost the state of Colorado an estimated $20 to $40 million per year. We're not going to roll those back to federal levels that were working just fine. The solution is always more taxes, more fees, and more regulation. And then, as we saw yesterday with the regulation, another bill is going to add about 1,000 pages to the building code, and it's not even code that we've written. So always, this is a natural, I see the need for this bill as a natural consequences of your prior bills, and this is the prior bills leading up to this, transportation-oriented housing, getting rid of the family occupancy limits, all of those things, moving density from like 6 to 15 to 20, 40 units per acre, all roll into this. They make these mobile home properties a more lucrative target as long as they get rid of the mobile home park. So, if you live in a mobile home park, citizens of Colorado, just know that the prior legislation targeted you, your property, and they want you gone.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before us is the adoption of House Bill 1224 on third reading, final passage. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representative Lindsay, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Lindsay votes yes. Representative Weinberg, how do you vote?
No, ma'am.
Representative Weinberg votes no. Representative Rutenell, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Rutenell votes yes. Please close the machine. With 40 aye, 22 no, and 3 excused, House Bill 1224 is adopted. co-sponsors. Representative Lindsay, co-sponsors. Representative Rootnell, co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Shebel, please read the title to Senate Bill 105.
Senate Bill 105 by Senator Hendrickson, also Representatives Martinez and Morrow, concerning county coroners and in connection therewith requiring coroners to disclose their financial interests in regulated businesses.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move Senate Bill 105 on third reading and final passage.
The motion before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 105 on third reading, final passage. Mr. Shebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representative Lindsay, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Lindsay votes yes. Representative Weinberg, how do you vote?
Yes, ma'am.
Representative Weinberg votes yes. Representative Rootnell, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Rootnell votes yes. Brown. Please close the machine. With 62 ayes, 0 no, and 3 excused, Senate Bill 105 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Representative Lindsay, co-sponsors. Representative Rootnell, co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move to lay over House Bill 1196 until tomorrow.
House Bill 1196 will be laid over until tomorrow. Mr. Shebel, please read the title to Senate Bill 122.
Senate Bill 122 by Senators Peltonar and Roberts, also Representatives Winter and Lukens, concerning liquid fuels and in connection therewith increasing the maximum amount of liability of the Petroleum Storage Tank Fund for individual incidents and allowing the Director of the Division of Oil and Public Safety to adopt a rule or issue policy guidance that provides exceptions to specific requirements established to an ASTM standard for petroleum products.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move Senate Bill 122 on third reading and final passage.
The motion before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 122 on third reading, final passage. Mr. Shebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representative Lindsay, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Lindsay votes yes. Representative Weinberg, how do you vote?
Yes, ma'am.
Representative Weinberg votes yes. Representative Rootnell, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Rootnell votes yes. Please close the machine. With 62 ayes, 0 no, and 3 excused, Senate Bill 122 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Representative Weinberg, co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to lay over Senate Bill 144 until tomorrow.
Seeing no objections, Senate Bill 144 will be laid over until tomorrow. Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move to lay over Senate Bill 109 until tomorrow.
Seeing no objections, Senate Bill 109 will be laid over until tomorrow. Mr. Shebel, please read the title to Senate Bill 104.
Senate Bill 104 by Senators Liston and Snyder, also Representative Clifford, concerning a requirement to install exterior key boxes at schools.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move Senate Bill 104 on third reading and final passage.
The motion before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 104 on third reading and final passage. Mr. Shebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representative Lindsay, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Lindsay votes yes. Representative Weinberg, how do you vote?
No, ma'am.
Representative Weinberg votes no. Representative Rootnell, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Rootnell votes yes. Please close the machine. With 42 aye, 20 no, and 3 excused, Senate Bill 104 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Representative Lindsay, co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title to Senate Bill 121.
Senate Bill 121 by Senators Rodriguez and Simpson, also Representatives Martinez and Winter, concerning the establishment of a threshold of 56 hours in a work week for when an agricultural employer is required to pay overtime to an agricultural employee.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move Senate Bill 121 on third reading and final passage.
Representative Garcia.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I know that I have taken up a lot of your time on this bill, and it's for a reason. I wouldn't just fight against a policy unless I felt and believed and knew that it would fundamentally have negative impacts and harmful impacts to communities. I want to just read a part of a letter that many members in this chamber sent to the Director of the Division of Labor Standards and Statistics when Senate Bill 87, which has been discussed a lot in this bill, was being contemplated. This was in an attempt to, again, raise the threshold of overtime to 60 hours, and as well finding an idea of a compromise for it to be 56 hours, which is exactly where we are today. Contrary to the spirit of Senate Bill 87, the proposed carve-out from daily overtime perpetuates the inequitable treatment of agricultural employees dating back to unconscionable race-based compromises during the New Deal. Moreover, the initial overtime threshold of 60 hours does not protect the health and welfare of employees, nor does the 56-hour threshold applicable to small and highly seasonal employers. The seasonality exception for 22 weeks would most likely be used from July through November, the hottest and smokiest time of year, encompassing the entire duration of most seasonal workers' employment. Rather than provide meaningful protections to agricultural employees, the proposed rules simply reformat the exceptional treatment through a complicated overtime system with high weekly thresholds and no daily rights to continue to create unique difficulties for agricultural employees seeking workplace conditions equal to those provided to other employees. What led to this was the adoption of the rules that gave agricultural workers 48-hour threshold before they could start to earn overtime. The fact that we are coming back without continued Colorado-based data that built on the research that led us to our current practices right now is concerning to me. The idea that by raising the overtime threshold will give an employee more hours that they can work is somehow going to save the agricultural industry is astonishing to me. If we want to save our local, our family farms, our small farms like we've been debating over the last 2 days, then why would a direct cash tax credit not be the answer to these small farms? Why is giving them the opportunity to keep somebody on their time card longer without any cost savings the answer? There is zero cost savings in this, but there is increased chances for for injury. Increased cost because of increased injury for small farms and their workers' comp insurance. When you have injured workers, and if they even report the injury, that's if they report the injury, then you lose out on productivity. We all know that productivity diminishes with every additional hour you are on the clock. That is for brain labor, and that is certain for manual labor. These protections are in place to protect farm workers. These protections that we were barely able to put in place in 2019 and 2021 were to correct a harm that was caused during the New Deal that targeted Black and brown workers. Why would we want to erase the work that this state, that the General Assembly has done to correct racism? This body, maybe not everyone in here, but this body stood up before to this, fought back against this before. Let us be that body that is on the right side of history and do that again today. I ask for a no vote.
Representative Bottoms.
Thank you, Speaker. I do agree with the sentiment of the bill sponsors. I'm not trying to question their motives here. I really am not. I believe that in the world that they live in, that this is the way that it works. But the workers in the fields, this is not the way it works. And so I would love to see workers get overtime at 40 hours in the fields. I would. It's just not a possibility because these farms can't afford it. These workers move from fields to fields. And when you move from one field to another field, by the way, your hours start over. This isn't like one big company that hires all these people to work in all these different fields. It's not the way it works. They're moving from field to field because that is the point of this. And I can tell you, and I gave the story yesterday, I don't want to filibuster, I don't want to take a lot of extra time. Just to say again, I have worked in the fields with these people. I have picked many vegetables. I have picked corn and onions and all kinds of things in the fields with these people. I love these people so much. We've had ministries and outreaches to these people. If you try to stop this and you move it from 56 to 48 and then over 5 years to 40, the only thing you're going to do is you're going to take food from the people's table. I know this. I have been there. I know these people. I have picked with them and then had lunch with them. I know this. You are going to hurt them. I am doing the best I can at the point of begging. Please do not stop this bill. This is going to hurt people. I know the intentions are fine. And if you, and you guys have been in here long enough to know if I thought their intentions were nefarious, I would say it. I'm not worried about that. I think their intentions are good. It will never work this way. And you're going to take food from people's tables. Please, please, please do not do this. You need to vote yes on this bill.
Representative Garcia Sander.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I don't think everybody was in here yesterday when I read a letter from one of my constituents. He's actually a really, really smart dad in my school, where I was last an administrator. And he's not the kind of man to be coerced by his boss. And so I think it's really important that his words are on the record. And I read most of the letter yesterday, Omar. I'm going to read it again. Dear members of the committee, my name is Omar, and I've spent the majority of my life working in agricultural sectors here in Colorado. I currently work on a diversified farm operation in Weld County. I'm writing today in support of Senate Bill 26-121. Since the full implementation of Colorado's overtime rules, I have personally experienced adjustments from my employer in my allotted work hours, thus resulting in less take-home pay than I have normally made during certain times of the year. I also know other agriculture workers who have experienced the same limitation in hours worked since the overtime requirement has gone into effect. Although done with positive intentions, the overtime requirements are impacting all of our families negatively. Our elected officials must understand that the agricultural industry is not like any other industry. Those of us who have worked and continue to work in the industry do it because we love the work we do and the overall gratification that we get from producing food and fiber that then benefits our communities. Of the personal impacts my own family and community has experienced, the loss of take-home pay has forced many to turn to working 2 or even 3 jobs to make a living and support their families. Again, I ask you to support Senate Bill 26-121. Kind regards, Omar. Omar, I just wanted to make sure that everybody hears your words, how important it is. I urge a yes vote on 121.
Assistant Majority Leader Bacon.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, I wanted to just speak again in regards to what I mentioned yesterday, and I will start by thanking the sponsors for the service to their community, as well as how they have just clearly demonstrated that they are just advocates who believe in their neighbors. And they are also people who have welcomed people like me into their communities to understand their issues. I want to point out and notice that, I do know yesterday was a long day, but I do believe the debate and the time spent on it demonstrates the issues and the concerns and the importance of this topic to our communities. Because I got to say, if anyone wanted to run a bill, for example, on segregating schools, I'd stand up here for 90 hours. And so I want to thank everyone for the debate and demonstrate why this is a difficult topic and why we should talk about it. I will say that having been here in 2021, when we voted on the bill to support farm workers, to now in 2026, I am particularly listening to what is the difference in circumstances to which we are now responding to. And the argument that I have heard the most is talking about the financial stressors and strains on the industry. I was here when we decided what a work week should be, given the context of the type of work. And I think the reason why we're having that conversation is because farm work is difficult for everybody, but for the farm worker, I just want people to understand there is a distinct physical impact that occurs in this type of work that is different. According to physicians, they are concerned about the long-term impact to muscles, the curvature of spines, and whatnot. So this is a particular type of work. Most of this work is done outside. And so when we're talking about overtime, we're not just talking about numbers on a sheet, we're talking about how it impacts bodies. Then, the people who work in this space typically make $25,000 a year, which means when they seek health care for those things, this is an average, it's not all the time, I apologize, right? Okay? Even for a range, we're not talking about more than $60,000 to $80,000. And the reason why I bring that up is for all the things that we use to determine indigency or support for things like health care. So at the end of the day, this also costs everybody because of what we know to be true about the type of work. Furthermore, right now, overtime is at 48 hours, and we looked into the data. 38% of farm workers are working overtime. So there is a way to understand the math about the hour change, and this is why I want to go back to what my colleague from Adams County said. If the argument is about finances, then tell us how much we're talking about, because to live in a world where we are confronting our values, so much so that they were demonstrated by X amount of hours, X amount of stories, X amount of fill in the blank, we should be in a place to understand what we're talking about, to give some of us in this room a chance to help solve this problem. I do believe it was an opportunity for all of us, as this entire chamber in this building, to say we believe in Colorado growers and ranchers and farms. And can we all have an opportunity to respond to the environment? And more importantly, can we have the information to do that? So if this is about costs, tell us how much it is. Can we support without saying a worker who we know is impacted with X amount of money, time, physical impact has to take the brunt of this? It is true what our farmers are facing. Costs are up. Margins are small. There is no argument about that for me. The community that does this work is incredibly important to the identity of this state. There is no Colorado if we do not have Colorado ranchers. There is no Colorado if we do not have Colorado dairies. There is no Colorado if we do not have Palisade peaches and melons from Rocky Ford. There is no Colorado without those things. We need to find a world in which those farms can be sustained so that they can offer ours, yes. But when we are faced with this challenge, especially over the last 4 years of the only difference, we should have an opportunity to address it where we do not pit those against each other, because costs are going up for everybody. Whether you are a farmer or a farm worker, milk is the same price, unless you're at a dairy. So we cannot operate to lower the income of one side when we know the costs are going up for everybody, and not think that's going to impact us as well. We will have another budget year talking about health care. And so I think it's fair to say, what is the problem and how are we trying to solve it? Because this may not be it. And lastly, I'll say this. If it is about conditions, the conditions are highly measured. The commodities markets we are aware of. We know what the impact is of lack of rain or water. Maybe we'll get an easing up of tariffs or whatever it is. And so we did not have an opportunity to make this conditional either, because when we vote on this, this is for all time. It is not for when we are facing these issues. There is not a difference in this bill between seasonal workers and year-round workers. In fact, I did not see what it is that we value for farm workers to keep our farms alive that are matched by conditions that we can actually control in this building. And so lastly, members, I do want to address what we're talking about by impact, because I do believe that the laws that we have and the treatment of this space is different, and it is rooted in bias. But I'm not going to say that is the intent of our sponsors. The concern that we have is, it is clear who is in this industry. And when we limit their opportunity to earn, that means we limit their opportunity to build wealth and to take care of their communities. And factually speaking, critical mass of this community now who does this work has stayed the same. I am still afraid to buy grapes because of the work of what happened 5 decades ago and the impact it had to certain communities. And so when we hear commentary from leadership talking about whose bodies are built for this type of work, we can't walk around ignoring that. But what we do have the opportunity to do is be conscious of the space and figure out how we can lean in. Because what is also true is there also is a critical demographic that is in farm work and who runs and owns the farms. And so to whatever extent we have to recognize what our eyes see and what we factually and statistically know to be about the space, we should take every effort every effort to mitigate those harms and think about how we can meet people where they're at to maintain all of those goals and good values. And so on behalf of my side of the aisle, we do believe that we value labor and good wages. And what I will meet is there has to be an opportunity to actually do that because there is a business. But if we have other levers, we should pull them.
Assistant Majority Leader Bacon, you have 1 minute remaining.
And so I want to end with anybody who's done a work even for a day. Whenever I got in trouble, we used to say cotton picking as a cuss word. Anybody ever pick cotton? It hurts. It's thorns in the bulb. And so the truth of the matter is, all of us have stories about this. But the question is, how do we solve the problem? The question is not the problem. The question is how we solve the problem. So I have faith in this body that we can do it together. But we might need a different approach than what's been proposed here. And we have the best people trying to solve it, all at the same time. Thank you, body.
Representative Kelty.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I'm going to come at this a little differently than what others have spoke about. You know, I listened all day yesterday, and I had to put my little business hat on. You know, in Colorado, across the entire nation, you know, we have different pay structures. We have commission only. We have hourly plus commission. We have low wage plus tips. We have salaried people who will work 100 hours, but they're still paid the same salary. And there's straight pay, and et cetera, et cetera. This type of industry has, like the restaurant industry and corporate industry, they have their own type of pay structure. And this is it. This bill right here supports that pay structure. You know, and the kicker is during committee, workers actually came into committee and they were asking for this bill. They were begging for this. They're saying, hey, we want to stay at the same place to be able to work longer. It's up to us how much money we want to make. It's up to us how many hours we want to work. And so worker after worker after worker came in and they spoke. They want to be able to work. They're okay with this. They're actually asking for this. I say we don't limit them. I say we give the people who are actually doing this type of work what they are asking for. It's their industry, it's their time, it's their money. They understand it completely. And I think that we should do what they want. It's not what we want. We can put our feelings on our sleeves. We think of it from our own industries. But this is theirs. They get it, they understand it, they work it, they live it, they want it. So I'm asking for a yes vote today. Because think of all the different pay structures. They chose this one, it's what they want. Who are we to tell them what they want? They already told us. I'm asking for a yes vote, please.
Representative Marshall.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's an honor to serve with you.
It is an honor to serve with you.
Colleagues, I know this is third reading, and I wasn't going to add to the marathon yesterday, but since we're doing this again, I thought to bring up one point that hasn't been heard, at least I haven't heard, is I don't fault the sponsors one bit because they're answering to their constituents. But I think a factor we need to consider is the people we're trying to help here aren't really constituents of any district because most of them are migrant farm workers, and as they've been talking about, they move. They move from place to place to place. They don't have the political power of being in one place and having voting power. It's not the same. So us looking at the situation and deciding that we need to take some kind of action, I think is appropriate. So trying to just defer to whatever the constituents want, in this case, when we have a labor pool that doesn't have the political power to defend themselves because they are mobile, makes the balance of power out of whack. We hear, well, that's not what they want, that's not what they want. Well, that's what they would say about the serfs in Russia constantly, that was there for hundreds of years. The labor costs going into the final product, I don't think is a massive amount for the final product. And I kept hearing the argument, well, this is a commodity market. We can't decide the price we're going to get, so we really have to be able to slam down our labor costs. Well, steel, coal, rubber, they were all commodities when they did the Fair Labor Standards Act, and they all got protections. So I think we do need to protect this group. When we say it's tradition, it's how we've always done things. Churchill had the famous statement after he became First Lord of the Admiralty. I wanted to get rid of all the sailing training when the Royal Navy had the greatest sailors in the world. And all the admirals revolted, said, this is something that's tradition. We have to spend all this time. And his response, of course, was, rum, sodomy, and the lash are all great traditions of the Royal Navy. Meaning that just because something's been done that way forever doesn't mean it's the right thing to be doing now. Things need to change, and I understand that this has been the way for the agricultural community forever, but that's why I'm going to be a no, is I think it's time for us to change. Thank you.
Representative DeGraff.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just hit start. All right. Yeah, sure. These individuals, migrant workers, are not technically constituents, but they do fall under the all. Created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, among which are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And these individuals are mobile. Let's say they just live in Mexico. They don't necessarily have to live in Mexico. They could be from other countries, but that's... And the allusion to that, the allusion to serfs were part of the property. There was no... That was... Serfdom is more in lines with socialism, where you have no property and you have where you've successfully abolished private property. These migrant laborers are engaging in the free market, and they are looking for a place where they can maximize the value of their labor. God bless them. So let's look at the math, because math, I always like this quote, math is the language with which God wrote the universe. And I would teach my students that it's a language that helps you understand the reality that's before you. So let's look at the reality that lies before you, because this math tells me that this is a pro-migrant bill. So let's look at the reality that lies before us. In Mexico, the average wage is somewhere between $17 and $24 per day for an ag worker. So let's just call it 20, because I like easy math, because $20 a day kind of corresponds with $20 per hour, which is where they're making. Now the minimum wage in Colorado is $15.16. So that little specificity of 16 cents, not just calling it $15.25, something rounded, but that $15.16, those 16 cents add up, is what we're saying. That's why it's $15.16 and not 15. So $20 an hour, that does reflect a level of that physical toil, because somebody that's standing at a retail counter is not putting in the same physical demand on their body as somebody that is out in a field. So we have some of that compensated already, and we compensate it. So why would a migrant worker come here and exchange their time and effort and time away from their family to make a daily wage every hour? Why would they do that? Now, we have some of the equivalent, like we'll have like oil rig workers, and they'll go out for a month at a time or something like that, because that's the nature of the job. They get paid, they get compensated. Somebody comes to the United States to work in a field, they get $20 an hour instead of $20 a day, and they can do that 8 days a week. 8 days a week. They can do that for 8 hours a day. Right? And so let's look at if we have a set amount of work, and you say that 56, let's say we have 56 hours per worker, right now. We would take that and you say, okay, the farm can do that. Now, we do need to solve the problem, but don't push off if you want to solve the problem of why the farmers have low margins, if you want to solve that problem of why they're selling their water in order to keep up with the taxes on their land, well, let's solve that. Don't push that off and then just say, well, we should solve that someday. But let's just look at 56 hours times 6 workers is 336 hours. Now, if you step that back and you go back to what we have now, that 8 hours would be overtime. So it costs more. So what you'd have is you'd say, well, if this was a pro-farmer bill, you would say 48 hours actually works more in that favor because 336 hours would be 48 times 7. Now the benefit for that farmer, for that ag owner, is that if you're working because everybody has said that the individuals are going to be more productive and more safe for that 8 hours that they're not working. So now, the farmer has to be taking on an additional level of risk in order to make that happen. So what he's going to be inclined to do is hire an extra worker. Well, that puts a demand on the labor force, but what does that do? Well, that means that ag worker is not going to work those 8 hours that week. Oh, I'm sorry, that means that ag worker is not going to work that 8 days that week. Because if he was working that 8 days that week, if he was working that 7 days, but see, I'm glad you're paying attention because it is 8 days. Because there's between 48 hours and 56 hours, there's the equivalent, the Mexico equivalent of 8 days, 8 hours. So your 8 hours here is the equivalent, 8 hours of work here is the equivalent of 8 days in Mexico. So yes, they are losing 8 days a week. So this bill allows these workers who are here to work in a concentrated fashion during a limited window of opportunity. It allows them to work an additional 8 days per week. And that's why they're here. Now above that, it starts to become cost prohibitive, and you're going to have to start hiring more workers. If you can't hire more workers, well, then it's going to get, but this allows these workers that are here, that are taking time away from their family, to earn an additional 8 hours per week. Now, in general, they're earning 48 days of pay per week, and this allows them to earn 56 days of pay per week. That's why they come up here. That's why we have a migrant labor influx. That's why we have people that make that transit. So when you're taking that, so what you're doing by saying, well, I feel good about this. I want to do all of these things. If you want to make their wages make more, we can lower taxes. That's never an option. But you will be costing these workers 8 days a week. And let's say the season is 16 weeks, right? 4 months. If the picking season, if the harvest season, or whatever season they're happening, let's just call it 16 weeks. So 16 weeks, like 120, you're talking 16 times 8, let's just do it. 48, 128, yep, I was right. So 128. So for the season that they are here, you're going to cost them 128 days of work. They're going to go home with 128 days less in their pockets. So to me, the math tells me that this is a pro-migrant worker bill. This, to me, is not exploitative of a migrant worker. He's going to go back to an area where the average wage, and that wage, that $20 per hour, is going to be the equivalent salary of $20, and he's going to go back with 128 extra days of labor in his pocket. Because if you disincentivize this, if you keep pushing in this direction, what we know is you're increasing the pressures for mechanization. You increase the pressures for mechanization, and you need less workers. These drones that we were looking at the other day, they pick 24/7. They don't have health care issues. You're going to be putting these individuals out of work, and you won't be just costing them in 128 days in a season of 4 months. you'll be costing them with their wage entirely. So we need to look at the math. We need to look at the reality that is before us. They're making, the reason that they have entered into the free market system, because they are here, they are not serfs. Serfs belong to the property. That is a feudal system. Socialism is just a neo-feudal system. So this is a pro-migrant bill. This allows them to earn an additional eight days a week, in addition to earning the 48 days per week. So if you want to limit their ability to go back home and take care of their families, vote no against this bill.
DeGraff, you have 1 minute remaining.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. If you want to optimize and you want to recognize their commitment, if you want to help them, let them negotiate because they're not tied to the land. If a farmer is not kind to them, I think there's a lot of farmers that need work, so they're going to be able to go someplace else. But this is a pro-labor bill. This honors the work that they do. This honors that they made that travel, that they made that commitment. Please do not cost these individuals 8 days a week. Let them earn that 8 days a week more. Let them take care of their families. Then go fix that country down south of us instead of, never mind, let them earn 8 days a week.
Representative Clifford.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's an honor to serve with you.
It is an honor to serve with you.
I grew up in a town where 98% of everything about the town was agriculture related. I could walk to a hatchery, I could walk to a feed mill, I could walk to chicken processing. I said yesterday, my dad milked cows growing up. If you look out my mother's door today, across the street are chicken houses, and outside on 3 sides of her houses are cows. I've been around farms my whole life. In the town that I grew up in, agriculture was the epicenter of all of the labor. It was in my lifetime and in my age growing up there that I first met immigrant labor. We went from it being all Scott County Mississippians to we started needing more labor, and we started needing more labor, and we started needing more labor. One of the things that's unique about that industry is that they pay people the same as all other workers, and they don't necessarily use the exemptions. And I can get that I don't understand deep ranching in Colorado. Where this gets me tripped up, however, is we talk about what farms can afford, and we're talking about commodities and commodity prices and fixed prices, et cetera, and I see tons of commodity industries that pay their labor well. What's disturbing to me that where we put our thumb on the scale is paying people. You know, we wouldn't be here having a conversation, well, why don't we just dictate the price of tractors? Why don't we just say you can't charge more than X for water? You are not allowed to charge more for seed. Monsanto can't come in and charge you X for seed. In fact, you have to do it at 10 cents on the dollar, because here in Colorado, we're going to help you control your pricing so that our farmers can survive. Instead, where we're looking at doing it is on labor, impacting the very people that come here to earn a wage. And not only do they come here to earn a wage, it's the wage that they can get. These people don't have pensions. We're not necessarily providing them health insurance. Some farms may. We're not giving them anything other than money for their time. And what we're arguing about here is that we should move the ball or the needle and say that they are worth less than other labor and other industries. And I don't think that that's where we should be looking, is on the paying for people. We should not be in the business of saying, you earn less because we say so. Now, it's not my job to work out how many hours a farmer provides as far as labor hours for someone to work. But just like I said yesterday, the Colorado State Patrol, we would never sit here and have the argument about their overtime. It would be unthinkable to us to do that. They don't get to choose how quickly they hire necessarily. They don't get to change their prices. They don't get to change what they charge for a damn thing. What they do is hire labor to go do work that we expect them to do. And when they cross over 40 hours, we pay them more because it's not their fault that we don't have enough people that they don't have to work overtime. And I can get the world of the math of a farm, but you just have to calculate that in as a price of labor. I can't help it that the commodity growers in Chicago, or the commodity purchasers in Chicago, are setting a price. That's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about here is us reducing labor pay as if we're doing something good for people. Who I represent in this building is people. And we should pay them. It should not matter to us, and we should not set a separate standard for where you work, for how much money you can make. We have the cart before the horse here in this conversation. It's wild to me, and I appreciate the business interest look at it, and I appreciate the conversation, and I really do, with all my heart, believe that these sponsors are trying to do the right thing. Fundamentally, it takes us in a direction that we should not be going. This is not where we should be chipping away. I heard someone say earlier up here that the cost of living is going up for everyone. We're not here fixing that. What we're doing is saying we're going to pay you less for the time you work. And that's what this comes down to. There's not anything else that this can boil out. This is us moving a goalpost. And we don't have to do that. Can we fix the farms here? Is this going to keep the farms in business? No. Is this going to make Monsanto charge less for seed? No. Is this going to make the cost of water go down? No. Is this going to make the overall lives of these farms better? No. What it's going to do is have us pay people less for the amount of work they do. And that is all. And I can't do that.
Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And to our good colleague who just spoke's point, this bill actually will make farms better. I want to bring this back to the ag worker. And I am close friends with many of them. I was the only female white player on a traveling team, all Hispanic, some Somali, and we traveled and played with multiple teams in the Northeast region. And I got to know many of their families well, their siblings, their moms, their dads, their aunts, and the stories they would tell. And I have kept those relations to this day from high school to now. And some of them, some stories come into light. I was talking with one of them, I won't say his name, who's had a couple car wrecks this last year because he was tired. He would go work 45 hours at a farm, and that wasn't enough for his family. So he would then go travel 2-3 hours to another farm to go pick up another 15 hours. And he was traveling between farms, trying to pick up more hours, because getting an extra 2 to 3 hours with overtime pay is not the same as getting another 15 to 20 hours somewhere else. And he was driving himself exhausted. He was started to have some seizures because of the lack of sleep. And some of his colleagues, his buddies that I also played soccer with, were in the same boat because they felt they were forced to go travel to other farms to pick up more hours, spending more time on the road than they were with their family, so that they could feed their family with more income. These are the stories we're talking about and the ones that hit me deep. saying, well, why, if you can get, 2, 3, 4 hours extra overtime is not comparable to 15, 20 extra hours on another farm. And why this bill helps the farmer is because I was talking to them and said, do you realize when you're working on a hog farm and you travel to another hog farm, you put those animals at risk for disease because we have something called biosecurity? And he said, I didn't realize that. About a month later, he said, you will be happy. I now work at a poultry farm and then the hog farm. And I said, no, biosecurity is still an issue. Or if you say you want to go work at one cattle industry and you're working with abscesses and somehow that transfers to another farm, you just spread that disease. So when we're looking at biosecurity and we see farmers, ag labor, because they call themselves farmers, they call themselves ranchers, they identify as cowgirls and cowboys because they are doing the boots on the ground work. This is what they take pride in. And we started having these conversations because that is their farm. They will say, it is my farm I work at because they have so much pride for it. And trying to explain that even though you're traveling to Wyoming or Nebraska or a county down with another ag industry, you are putting that livestock at risk because of biosecurity when you work at one and travel to another. And that hit them deep and they said, well, what do we do? Because we need more hours. That 2 to 3 extra hours with overtime is not doing it for our family. When I am trying to send money back to my family in other areas, that is not doing it. So they would rather risk having multiple car wrecks, seizures, and risking that they're not getting sleep because they go work 40, 45 hours at one farm, then go pick up 15, 20 at another, and we're also putting the animals at stake because of that biosecurity. And that hit them deep when I was talking, especially with this gentleman that's my age. We went to school together, and he said, I will tell my friends, maybe we go and pick up some crop work, or we go and work on doing some welding at this one farm so we're not mixing with different animals. That we will make sure that if we are at this one place with animals, we'll go and work crops or something else. Still not explaining that sometimes even that stuff on your boots, when you travel, different soils, different areas, it is a high biosecurity, but they have that in their heart that they don't want to risk the farms that they are so proud to work for, but they need more hours. So when we talk about health, please keep in mind the ones that are trying to work extra, and they're on 2 to 3 farms. I know them. And this gentleman, I pray every day, doesn't have that fourth car wreck. For some of his friends and colleagues who have to live on energy drinks because they are so exhausted from those extra hours that they direly need for their families. And when talking with them, if they could get 56 hours, they said they probably wouldn't have to pick up the extra farm or two. Yes, they would love more. Yes, they'd be able to say, I can stay in one location that's close to my home, work there without the travel, and not have to risk biosecurity by transferring different animal diseases by farms. But I can't do that because in Colorado, we can't do that. So this is for the farmers. This is for the ag workers. This is for the animals, for biosecurity. And this vote, when I talk with the people in Northeast Colorado, not the lobbyists, not the organizations, the people, boots on the ground, this will make Colorado agriculture better. I urge a yes vote.
Representative Velasco.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I want to start by thanking my colleagues on both sides of the aisle. Just last week, we were having conversations around the budget, and we stood together to help teachers. We stood together to protect benefits for firefighters and for peace officers. So I know that this chamber cares about workers and that we can stand up for working families. And as we're having this conversation around people who have to have multiple jobs, when I was 17, I had just started culinary arts school, and my dad fell off the roof as he was cleaning the snow off the roof and broke his back. So I was working 2 jobs to help my mom make ends meet. I was working from 4 in the morning until 12 p.m. at night in restaurant jobs. And I can tell you that I was getting overtime at both of those jobs. I was getting paid the hours that I was working, and that was helping me and my family. I want to continue what my colleague from Adams was talking about, this letter that was shared in 2021. And I want to read a part of it that says, agricultural employees performing manual labor for more than 40 hours per work week or 12 hours per workday deserve to be fairly compensated for the toll on their bodies and the time away from their families across industries. Working long hours increases the risk of injury due to stress, fatigue, and decreased sleep. If the seasonal demands of agriculture require employees to labor for more than 40 hours per work week or 12 hours per workday, they should be compensated for the damage to their health, welfare with time, and 1.5 of the regular rate of pay. And also, as we were having these conversations around the budget, I think that there was an important conversation around our safety nets and why those numbers were exceeding the cost that we had expected. And that is because we are creating unfair conditions for workers, because people cannot make ends meet, because more people need support, more people are going through hard times. We also heard that this was not about race, that this was not about different groups of people. But we also heard our colleague talk about Mexicans and Mexico. We also heard another colleague said she was the only white person in this group. So I know that all of us here, we represent everyone in our communities, no matter their immigration status. And I want to go back to the pieces around the pressures that farming is experiencing. We know that we are seeing a changing climate, that we are breaking all the records when it comes to extreme heat, that we're seeing protections for workers being rolled back at the federal level. We are seeing decades-long droughts, issues with water, issues with our water compacts, farmland being retired. We lost 30 days of winter, and all of that is not going to be fixed by this bill. We are seeing federal infrastructures at the federal level that we have relied on, like the EPA and like OSHA, to be defunded. We are also seeing the persecution of brown people across the country, of people with documentation, without documentation, of people who are just brown, and they are being persecuted. The racial profiling of people. And as we talk about health and healthy outcomes, we know that the determinants of health are the range of personal, social, economic, and environmental factors that influence health status. That includes income, social status, education, physical environment, social support networks, health services. And I want to ask, what are all those supports for farm workers? And I want to share some of the testimonies that were presented in 2021 during the adoption of overtime pay and detailing impacts of long hours. We have a farm worker who commented, "It's been 7 years since I decided to come to the United States. I've worked with sacrifices, long work hours, between 12, 14, and up to 16 hours daily. I don't have time to see my children because of work, without a right to vacation, to pay for overtime hours." And this was translated from Spanish. Workers from the San Luis Valley. I'm an agricultural worker from the San Luis Valley. Agricultural workers should be paid overtime after 40 hours. They need to be remunerated for the hard work and be able to spend more time with family. Working more than 40 hours a week can harm your body in the long run. Working overtime has affected my mental and physical health. I feel guilty for not being here for my family, and I'm always tired. Sad to have to work extra hours. Stop treating me like workers. We are the people with family and children. another agricultural worker from the San Luis Valley. I'm an agricultural worker in the San Luis Valley. The workers, we are abused. It's time to give overtime after 40 hours, to spend time with my children at events without worrying about money or about my time. Another worker from the San Luis Valley. If they were to pay me overtime with my extra hours, I could adjust to go out more as a family with my children. I feel more valued and appreciated. I will be happier and would dedicate more time to my family. Another agricultural worker. I'd like to comment both from my personal experience working on farms and from all the research, particularly because the work is so connected to the seasons. There are going to be times of the year when farmers are working 60+ hours a week, and they deserve to make the same overtime pay as any other worker who is hustling during a peak season. Think about retail employers in warehouses in December. And I would say, think about the ski industry and the winter season. And I want to close talking about how wage theft is only possible because of racist beliefs that individuals who lack legal documentation are of inferior status and therefore rightfully excluded from society. We tolerate and value unauthorized immigrants for their productivity, rather than as people who deserve political and social membership. These discourses are shaped by and continue to justify the disposability, deportability, and replaceability of Latino immigrant workers. The same social hierarchies and racial notions that justify paying Latino immigrants less make it less objectionable to steal from them. I have a terrible feeling that no matter how much we demonstrated the need to address farm workers' safety in this bill and brought studies that clearly demonstrated health risks and other supporting materials, that this body might very well end up passing a bill anyways to balance industry needs off the backs of workers. Too often, many of us, when fighting for smaller and marginalized communities, are asked to do a study to prove that this is an issue or a problem. But we are going to take industry at their word. But we ask marginalized communities to prove their work first. What comes up from this...
Representative, you have 40 seconds remaining.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I am a strong no. Because wage theft punishes employers who play by the rules by giving bad actors who undercut their workers a cost-saving advantage. Workers shouldn't suffer in order to survive. I urge a no vote on this bill.
Representative Richardson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, colleagues. I didn't come up and speak yesterday. I listened a lot. I'm going to start with a question. You can answer it yourself. Where will farm workers work when the farms are no longer here? We're seeing a tremendous loss in number of farms in this state and land in production. Those are facts. We were asked yesterday for facts. Those are facts. We heard a lot about what happened back in 1938 when the Fair Labor Standards Act was first put together. Back in 1938, when that first came together, it covered 20% of the workforce in this country. The large majority of workers were not covered under that. We can draw conclusions about who was left in and who was left out, but the fact remains it was not a small minority that was not covered by that act. I heard a colleague today talking about the fact that we don't dictate the price of water, we don't dictate the price of tractors, we don't dictate the price of seed. It's because price fixing is wrong. And we know that. And that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to fix the price, the input price of labor. This bill is hard because we waded into an area we shouldn't have years ago. and now we're trying to fix it. It's 2026. For well over 150 years, producers have employed workers in agriculture in this state. These workers voluntarily offered their services and their labor in return for a fair wage, and it was one that was worked out between the employer and the employee, and it worked for nearly 150 years. As I said, we waded into that as a legislature to try to fix something that was not broken, and we broke it. We heard an offer earlier today that let's just throw money at the problem, as if we have money that isn't taken from the pockets of the people we're saying we're trying to help. That is not a fix to a problem. And I know it's hard because we made the problem, now we're trying to fix it. But it's something we didn't need to fix to start with. Farming is hard, ranching is hard. And the people that grow up in that life, the people that choose to pursue it as their livelihood, are good people. There are bad actors, I'm sure. There are bad actors in every industry, in every sector, in every room. But the people I know, workers and those that employ them alike in agriculture, are good people, and they're humble people. And they're humble people because they are humbled almost on a daily basis, certainly on an annual basis. They're humbled by the weather, they're humbled by lack of rain, they're humbled by too much rain, they're humbled by blight, they're humbled by disease that moves through herds. They're humbled by the things they know they can't control, and yet they keep working. You hear it a lot. It ain't much, but it's honest work. And that applies to everybody that we're talking about here today. These are people on both sides that are trying to do well for themselves, their families, and their communities, whether they're moving away from their communities for a short period of time to work each year, or whether they're trying to sustain a community here in Colorado. We've heard a lot about wages and very little about earnings. And earnings is what's important here. You know, every day we work a long day here, our hourly rate is really low. But some days we take off early and our hourly rate would be fine, but our earnings stay the same. I just ask you to think about some of those things. But I do want to talk a little bit about my district, where agriculture is not just a talking point, it's the backbone of the economy. It supports families, small towns, local businesses, the way of life that still matters deeply in rural Colorado, and we're trying to think that we can fix rural Colorado from this room. It is the backbone of our state, and it's under a lot of strain. In the 7-county region that I represent, we've seen the loss of farms, the loss of farm production, and yes, rising economic pressure on the operations that remain. Well, the value of economic production in my district has risen. The cost of producing has gone up tremendously, and yes, worker cost is one of those input costs. Folks that run businesses need some flexibility to best address what they're facing. And they can do this in coordination with their workforce. We're taking away the ability to coordinate, to work with the people that are employed. That's kind of the context that I see this bill in. And it's been said a lot that agriculture, and I think everybody understands it, some from looking at it from the outside, some of us from looking at it from the inside, but it doesn't run on a 9-to-5 schedule. Livestock doesn't care what the clock says. You know, even if you have pets, when the clocks change, they still wanted to be fed when they were hungry, not when the clock just changed. They got to be fed, milked, monitored, and cared for every day. Most of the farming in my region is grain. It's largely mechanical, but we have a lot of folks that work in animal care and livestock care. And a long time ago, 88 years ago, we're still talking about it today, the government did decide that agriculture didn't fit neatly into a model built for other industries, and that is something that we're struggling with. And if you're familiar with other industries, I think we all try to kind of put things in the boxes we're familiar with. If this is one of those areas you're not familiar with, it doesn't fit neatly into a box. And when we get it wrong, and I think we did a few years ago when this was originally passed, now we're trying to fix it. Nobody's winning. There's a lot of people here that are angry at each other because we're looking at the problem from different sides. And there's no reason to be angry with one another. Nobody's trying to hurt anybody in this building. We're all trying to help. But we also have to recognize that sometimes when you try to help, you break something. And we've got to admit that, and sometimes let others fix what we broke. You know, when producers can't absorb the added costs that they're seeing, they do what they have to do. They make savings where they can. First, just about every one of these employees takes the hit themselves. They absorb all the costs they can, to the point of taking losses before they cut into workforce pay. That is generally the absolute last thing you want to do. You got people that come back to you year after year if you are a good employer. You want those good workers back. You know, they are treated as members of the family, visiting members of the family for months at a time, sometimes permanent members of your family, depending on who you're employing and what you do. But by making these steps or refusing this bill, we are cutting into the earnings, the overall earnings that people can make, and that does matter.
Representative, you have 1 minute remaining.
Okay. The bill is not anti-worker. It's actually just pro-reality. We need flexibility. We need to be able to adjust where we have to in order to keep farms and ranches operational and to have jobs for people to seek out. If we're serious about protecting rural Colorado, we need to stop forcing one-size-fits-all policies down the throat of this industry and every other. We are doing a lot of damage in this building. We've done a lot of damage by trying to throw money at problems that doesn't fix them. It just allows them to grow under the surface. So let's put the fix back in the hands of those that know this industry best. Let our farmers and ranchers decide and our workers decide together what's the right amount for somebody to pay for the labor that they are giving. Please vote yes for this bill.
Representative Mabry.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. First off, I just want to say that I believe that the bill sponsors believe they're doing the right thing. I disagree with them. And to the bill sponsor from the San Luis Valley, I show up in your district over and over again. I visited farms there. I hear the concerns, and I know you are trying to help the people in your community and respond to your constituents. Farm workers remain to this day fully excluded from federal overtime protections under the Fair Labor Standards Act. Every other hourly worker in America qualifies for overtime pay after 40 hours. Farm workers do not. The United Farm Workers spent decades fighting that legacy, organizing in the face of violent oppression, marching, fasting, because farm workers had been deliberately cut out of the protections every other hourly worker had. Their fight was not just about wages. It was about the proposition that a person who harvests our food deserves the same protections as the people who build our cars. And today, we are being asked to move in the opposite direction. Here in Colorado, we have approximately 30,000 farm workers. Their median annual income is between $20,000
and $25,000 for full-time work in an industry that is often seasonal, meaning they often earn far less. Colorado farm workers earn roughly half the average wage of all workers in this state. 21% live in poverty, roughly twice the national rate, despite performing some of the most physically demanding, dangerous, and essential work in our economy. And I want folks to hear from farm workers directly who had put in comments with the Department of Labor and Employment when we were crafting this overtime rule. Elfondo said, I worked an average of 60 to 90 hours a week where I did not receive not even a single dollar of overtime pay. In addition, we were verbally abused by our boss if we tried to defend our labor rights. An anonymous farm worker from the San Luis Valley wrote, working overtime has affected my mental and physical health. I feel guilty not being there for my family, always tired. Stop treating us like indentured servants. We are people with family and children. I want to name what this bill means for health and safety. Farm workers are 6 times more likely to die on the job than the average American worker. Research shows that mortality rates rise nearly 20% as weekly hours increase. Cersei Leone, a health prematura working with Colorado farm workers, describes seeing workers with constant pain and mobility impairments due to muscle fatigue, who resort to daily ingestion of painkillers and even alcohol. When we raise the overtime threshold to 56 hours, we are telling workers they must absorb more hours of dangerous, physical, brutal labor before receiving any premium for that added risk. Now, I want to address the economic arguments we hear against this bill directly. We are being told 2 things that to me cannot be true at the same time. First, that farms are in financial distress and they cannot afford a little bit of extra pay for overtime. Second, that workers will earn more because this threshold being lifted will let them log more hours. Those arguments contradict each other. If farmers can't afford overtime, why would they be able to pay people to work more hours? If they are really at the margins, we are talking about $15 an hour. If they are really at the margins, that argument makes no sense. The rational response is going to be to keep workers under the threshold no matter what it is. The farm saves and the worker earns less money. We have data on how this is already working, and it's not. 55% of dairy workers and 70% of livestock workers in Colorado are already exceeding the 48-hour threshold. But only 38% of those workers are actually receiving overtime pay. 38% of the 55% of dairy workers and 70% of livestock workers are getting the extra pay even though they have earned it. That is wage theft, are not getting the extra pay. That is wage theft. And it does not paint a picture of something that is likely to make or break an industry. The financial pressures on farms are real, but they come from a broken economy. They come from tariffs, collapsing commodity markets, a war driving up fertilizer costs, federal relief flowing overwhelmingly to mega operations. Under the Farmer Bridge Assistance Program, the largest 5% of farms receive 41% of all bailout payments. That's not caused by overtime pay or workers. Manuel Barone is a Colorado landowner and farmer, and he said during the 2021 rulemaking process that 40 hours is dignified, a solid week's worth of work. People who are not underpaid and overexhausted perform better. That is not science, it is humanity. He is a farm owner. He said it was on him to figure it out. It is on me to figure out. So when supporters say small farms are suffering, I believe them. My response, address the actual causes, challenge the tariffs, reform the subsidy programs, funding dollars to mega operations instead of family farms. Don't cut worker pay. Asking farm workers earning less than $25,000 a year to solve farm financial distress by forfeiting overtime is not a solution. It is a transfer of wealth from the poorest and most vulnerable workers to their bosses. I also want to be honest about the political dynamics here. Senate Bill 121 has been driven by owners and industry groups, not by the workers whose wages are at stake. 70% of farm workers are foreign-born.
Under this administration, immigration enforcement has created real and documented fears in the agricultural communities across the state. Patricia, who is an ESL teacher who works with Colorado farm workers, described workers who cannot take a night class to learn English because they work so many hours. Workers who are threatened against speaking to advocates and fear they won't be hired back if they accept help. These workers are afraid. My best friend is a workers' rights attorney. One of his clients last year, an immigrant, was told by their boss when she complained about not being paid for work that she did that she could get a bullet in her head or a call to ICE if they asked for their pay one more time. This industry is dominated by migrant workers. This community is under attack and terrified, and now we are looking to cut their pay at this moment in this country? The people who are most afraid to stand up and advocate for themselves out of fear of retaliation. Another farm worker who commented on 2021's rulemaking asked a question that I can't shake. There are times of the year when farm workers are working 60+ hours a week, and they deserve to make the same overtime pay as any other worker who's hustling during peak season. Think about a retail employee who's working in a warehouse in December. Why do retail and warehouse workers deserve overtime pay in the Christmas season, but farm workers in the harvest season do not? Workers deserve equal protection under the law. All work is dignified, and there is no reason to give one group of workers fewer protection than the rest. The farm workers who spent generations fighting for these protections, who organized when it was dangerous, who marched when they had nothing, we're not afraid. The least we can do is hold on to what they won. Democrats should not pass legislation that cuts pay for vulnerable workers in our state. That's not who we are. And a key question I keep coming back to is what will be the legacy of this legislative session? What will be the legacy of the 75th General Assembly? If we pass this bill, part of that answer will be cutting pay for farm workers. We will have made it harder for the most vulnerable workers in our state to qualify for wages that they had already won. I am a strong no on this bill, and I urge my colleagues to join me.
Representative Soper.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in strong support of this bill. Members, to quote John F. Kennedy, who said, "The farmer is the only person in our economy who buys everything at retail and sells everything at wholesale and pays freight both ways." These words have always echoed with me throughout my entire life because of the impact of the unique situation of the American farmer, the Colorado farmer. They're treated completely differently, the farmer and the farm worker, because the dynamics are completely different in agriculture. I hail from a small farm town in rural western Colorado. My legislative district has close to 3,000 acres of orchards, including the famous Palisade peaches, 1,000 acres of grapes, 3,000 acres of Olathe sweet corn, some in my district, some in Rep. Sukla's district. We also have alfalfa for cattle production. There's beets, onions, potatoes that are also grown. What we know is that over the last 5 years, throughout our entire state, 1.6 million acres of farmland has been lost. We also know that agriculture is on eggshells right now in our state. I had one farmer tell me it might be best if we just send all our water to California, where they have the large corporate farms. They can truck the food back to us, and we'll pay California rates for it. Maybe it's better that way. I like to think that we produce a better quality in Colorado, using Colorado workers on Colorado soil, supporting Colorado's economy. The last thing I want to do is to create a situation in which Colorado's farmers can't make it, and the only result is to sell out for the value of the land and water, with the latter being probably more valuable, and the large corporate farms that can farm year-round using high-tech equipment in Southern California will be our access to food. That's not the future I want. 90% of Colorado's farmers are only paid in an 8 to 12-week period. I want to quote that again. 90% of our farmers are only paid in an 8 to 12-week period. How often are you paid? Well, I happen to know the answer. We're paid every month here in the legislature. We don't worry about having to float for, 9 months? Not knowing what happens over that time? Or how about if there's a weather disruption, like this year, the year without winter? A farmer now who was paid in 2025, in that 8 to 12 weeks, is having to float what they may have made throughout this year, going into next year. And heaven forbid, we see a freeze. I read the weather, and we are slated to have a bad freeze both here on the Front Range and over on the West Slope. Farming is incredibly difficult, and is perhaps one of the few members in this chamber who has been a farm worker. For 8 summers, I worked picking Olathe sweet corn. I can tell you, from 4 a.m. to mid-afternoon, we worked hard. My brother and I were perhaps the only Caucasians on the crew. We made, at least in our opinions, quite good money. We knew that it was hard work. We volunteered for the job. But we also knew that the intensity was over relatively quickly. Harvest season is very quick, and then it's over. You're wanting to work as hard and as long as you can to fill your back pocket with as many dollar bills as possible. Both then and still today, I know many migrant workers. They all happen to be from Mexico, but that's not exclusively the country of migrant workers, obviously. And they have told me, I just want to work many hours, fill my back pockets with cash, and go back home, because they also own farms in their home country. They invest what they make in the United States back in their farms and with their families back home. Having lived long enough to get to know now a second and third generation of some of the farm workers, I have actually had the pleasure of knowing several of them who have been able to send their kids to schools here in Colorado. You watch as a migrant labor program has actually uplifted an entire country, one where now an opportunity has emerged, one where those kids are not remaining in agriculture. I think some of their parents might like them to, because they're also worried about the legacy of their family farms in their home country, just like we're dealing with in our state. We have an aging agricultural community. Our farmers aren't getting younger. The average age of a farmer is now hitting their late 50s. The continuation of farms in Colorado is looking pretty bleak, to tell you the truth. The next generation of Coloradans look at the financials. They look at the struggle that their parents have been through. And they say, there's no way I'm going to be a farmer. We need to think about the farming community. The fact that whether you're a farm laborer or the farmer themselves who labors, they're all out there together. There's not this owner class and worker class. We have farmers, and I think it's important that we don't just distinguish it between the two. They're farmers. And a farm laborer is a farmer. And when I talk to my friends who come here every year, we don't talk in terms of, oh, you're a migrant worker, you're a laborer. No, They say they're a farmer, and they're proud to be a professional farmer. That's what they're incredibly proud of. And I believe it's also a little bit demeaning to try to create this strong separation, because this is all a choice. Members, as we vote today, I would encourage you to think about the unique situation of farming. It's not like factory work. It's not like working in a warehouse. This is where you have a short burst of intensity in the harvest season, and then, surprisingly, it's relatively quiet, not without continual work, but certainly the number of hands needed are not as strong. But you also have lots of downtime in farming, time that you can't really quantify. That warehouse company or that widget factory, they're going to be expecting certain outputs all the time. But imagine you're a sheep herder on the Uncompahgre Plateau. How do you quantify when you're out there for 3 months at a time, protecting the herd of sheep, watching? How do you quantify that? Or a range
Representative,
rider?
you have 1 minute remaining.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And that's the uniqueness of agriculture. That's why it's not like any other industries. You have downtime that's still being paid for, but then you also have intensities, time that is being paid for. So I'd strongly ask for a yes vote. Thank you.
Representative Goldstein.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It is an honor to serve with you.
It is an honor to serve with you.
Folks, this is the first time I've gotten up here on this. I've been a no vote for a long time, and I haven't wavered, but I wanted to take the opportunity to explain why. I do appreciate the sponsors bringing this very important topic forward, and I honestly feel like we all care about farm workers. But when my colleague from Denver asked if anybody had picked cotton, my hand shot up because I have. Granted, it wasn't for a very long time, but I did get the technique down. And I did spend time when I lived on a kibbutz in Israel weeding those cotton fields, so unfortunately that's the extent of my agriculture work. But I did spend my whole career with a master agreement as an educator. And that master agreement were negotiated wages and working conditions. Our farm workers don't have master agreements. We've heard how hard it is on their bodies. We've noticed that they haven't testified. We feel mostly because it's out of fear and because they're afraid. But the bottom line here is that they have very few protections for what they do. I love Olathe sweet corn. I love Rocky Ford melons. I love Palisade peaches, and I've drank a bottle of wine from Palisade too. But the point here is that it's left to us, this body, to protect those workers. And and voting no on this bill is a way to protect them, and that's why I am a no. So thank you.
Representative Luck.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in support of this bill, and I want to give a shout out also to the representative from Denver for noting that this bill resulted in quite a bit of deliberation yesterday. Deliberation that I believe we should have on most every bill, and so I will take the opportunity to support the notion of principled discourse from the well as we flesh out the impacts of any particular policy, this one being roughly 3 pages, on the people of Colorado. In 2021, I represented House District 47, which at the time encompassed portions of Pueblo and Fremont counties as well as Otero County. And so I had the pleasure of meeting the Knapps and the Hiracatas and the Hannigans. There's the Jenkins and the Colins, the Musos and the Maros. And when that bill was being debated, I had some folks in my office who were explaining to me their farming and the community that they have established. There are folks in that district who have been farming for generations, who own the farms in Colorado, but also families who have been farming those farms for generations that have crossed the border to do so. There are Coloradans who married the migrants. There are migrants who are the godparents of the Coloradans. And it is genuinely, for many of these farms, a family. And so it pains me to hear of some of the stories that have been shared. And I would venture to say that because we've heard the exact same example today and yesterday, that one example, that it's probably a one-off. One-off in terms of bad actors. And what we know is that every industry has them. And that to legislate to the one bad actor often makes for very bad law. It's like in court cases, bad facts make for bad decisions. This particular bill does not in any way preclude farmers from paying more to their wages. It doesn't preclude farmers and their workers from entering into negotiation for more than minimum wage or for overtime pay after certain conditions are met. This bill just says we're creating minimums and maximums, a floor, if you will, right? Once you hit this particular standard, then these other conditions apply because the state has an interest at this point and beyond. That doesn't hinder these workers to negotiate their own terms up to that particular standard. And I don't think that anyone in this room is suggesting that these workers are unable or incapable of advocating for their own interests. If that is being argued, then you don't know these individuals. And you don't know the conversations that they have with the people with whom they work. And as fewer and fewer folks make themselves available for farm work, their bargaining power increases. Because if there is no labor to do that, especially for these small farms who can't afford hundreds of thousands of dollars in equipment, then negotiating terms in what used to be a free market economy is an open door for them. I know a woman who lives in a farming community. Her alarm during a portion of the year goes off at 4:45 in the morning. And she's starting to work at 6:30. Depending on the day, she finds herself having to plead for bathroom breaks. And there are no set other breaks. Temperatures can be extreme, hot and cold. Some days, she works late into the night because the work needs to get done. There are physical impacts to her body because of the position with which she finds herself in doing that work day in and day out. Portions of her body become weak. And when she's tired, if she makes mistakes, there are larger societal impacts, potential harms. People ask her, why would you do that work? There are other things you could do. Why would you do that? Why would you subject yourself to those particular requirements? You don't get paid commensurate with the work that you do. In fact, many of her coworkers have been heard bemoaning the same. And yet she freely chooses to do it. She's an adult. She has consented. She has made the calculus and said that all of the costs are well worth the rewards. No one forces. There is no fence around the place where she works. She is freely able to come and go. But she finds that it satisfies all of the things that tilt the equation in favor of continuing to work. She doesn't see her family. But that's okay, because she has freely engaged in contract. And that's what we're talking about here, freely engaging in contract. And yet, there are folks that would say that the terms by which she has contracted are unconscionable, and that the state should step in and do something. They should change the rules. In fact, one of the prior speakers said, quote, "There's no reason to give one group of workers protections different from the rest." The state could argue they have a role to play in that. And yet, they haven't. They haven't actually played in that particular space. But they're contemplating playing in this one. We're told that these folks don't have political power. And yet last week we were told that this same population, or portions of this same population, had a lot of political power, as was denoted by 30-some different nonprofit groups advocating for them. We've heard letters from both sides.
Representative Luck, you have 1 minute remaining.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Now, I will say this. If you come across a starving person, good-natured individuals would be inclined to lay a buffet before them, encouraging them to eat as much as possible. And yet, those good-natured individuals would be lacking in medical knowledge, because to feed a starving person lots of food actually could lead to their demise. In the same way, if you don't understand this space, your good nature could lead to the demise of those who would like to work on the farms and the farms themselves. And just as a note, the woman I described works for the General Assembly. She's me.
Representative Wilford.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This thing's a little tall. Thank you. I want to start by acknowledging my colleagues, as many other speakers have this morning, who are running this bill. I know your hearts, and I know that you are doing the best that you can to represent your communities. I respect it, and I know that it's what each and every one of us here are called to do in this work. And in this work, we also get to disagree. That's part of building policy. And I don't think it's any surprise that I disagree on this policy. Yesterday, I spoke about my daughter asking me where food comes from. And I want to talk today about who actually gets the flexibility of this policy and who actually gets the fatigue. This bill has been sold as relief for struggling family farms. There are family operations in this state running on thin margins and a deep love for the land. And then there are large agricultural employers, corporations, consolidators, who have spent years arguing against the same basic labor standards that every other industry follows. This bill does not distinguish between operators and families' farms. It hands a cost-cutting tool to everyone, including the ones who least need it and the ones that don't want it at all. If that is not a one-size-fits-all approach that doesn't recognize nuance or humanity, then I don't know what is. Colorado is no stranger to seasonal issues or seasonal industries, especially ones that are impacted by climate change. We've heard this work is seasonal, and so therefore this action is justified. So I ask you all, what's next? Are we going to legislate a cap on overtime for the ski industry, for the tourism industry, for the rafting industry, or hunting guides or firefighters? Those jobs are seasonal. Those jobs contribute to our economy. So why is it acceptable to cut overtime for these employees, for farm workers? We've heard that without the ability to cut overtime, farms will fail, or worse, they'll sell to the very corporations we say that we're trying to beat. I find that argument extraordinary, because what it is actually saying is this business model only works if workers are underpaid. If that is the argument, then the argument is the problem, not the wages of farm workers. We just celebrated Farm Workers Day in Colorado, and this timing of this bill has just really been weighing on me. I don't understand how we can celebrate farm workers on one day and vote to exclude them from fair compensation on the next. Having a holiday is recognition. Cutting wages while telling people that we value them is lip service. I've heard this bill be called a tough decision. I keep waiting for someone to come to the mic with a solution that doesn't require workers to absorb the cost, that doesn't ask people already earning less, already without benefits, already without job security, already working in conditions that the CDC has documented as some of the most hazardous in the country, to be the ones that sacrifice so that a business model can survive. To me, this is a question of who do we center in policy? When things get hard, and they will always get hard, who do we ask to take less? Who do we ask to sacrifice more? A farmer who shared his perspective in this process said it plainly. People who are not underpaid and overexhausted perform better. He said that he worried we are trying to preserve a structure built for a time that no longer exists. I think he's right, and I think we have a choice about what side of history we're going to stand on. And I, for one, will not ask the farm workers to further sacrifice their bodies and wages that are not accessible to overtime. I'm not going to ask them to keep sacrificing to feed us. I'll be a no vote today, and I ask you to do the same.
Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It is an honor to serve with you.
It is an honor to serve with you.
Let me start by saying how much I appreciate the thoughtful and healthy debate from both sides of the aisle that we had yesterday. I also want to thank the bill sponsors who brought heart, conviction, and a willingness to lead on something like this in such a difficult conversation. These aren't easy conversations, and they shouldn't be. They matter way too much for that. And I want to be honest with you. This is a tough decision for me, not only as a labor champion, but as someone whose family were farm workers. I spent time with this bill. I read it. I sat with the amendment. I talked with farm workers, advocates. I talked with community, and ultimately I talked with my family. And after all those conversations, I kept coming back to something that stayed with me. People aren't asking for less protections. They're asking for a fair chance to make a living. And when I think about this policy, I don't see numbers. I see faces. I see the worker waking up before the sun rises, stepping into a long day of labor most of us will never fully understand. And then I see what happens when that work is still not enough to make ends meet. Because right now, too many workers are being kept just under the line at 35, 38, 39 hours. Not because the work isn't there, but because the system makes it easier to avoid overtime than to provide stability. So they leave for another job and another job. And somewhere in between, they try to be parents. They try to hold their families together. That kind of life doesn't just wear a body down, it wears a spirit down. I know that life more than I wish I did. My mother and grandmother were farm workers. They worked long days in the fields, and when that work wasn't enough, they did what they needed to. They found more work, and I remember watching them stretch everything, every dollar, every ounce of themselves, and I remember the worry, the quiet kind, wondering if it'll be enough. This is not opportunity, this is survival, and too many families are still living there today. So when we talk about this bill, we have to be honest. We tried to build a system to protect workers years ago, but in practice, it's not working the way it was hoped. Hours are being capped, workers are being pushed into instability, and leadership means we do not have to ignore that. It means we should have the courage to say we can do better and will do better. This bill is not perfect, but it is a step toward reality. It allows workers to take on more hours in one place. It removes the incentive to keep them going from job to job. It gives them a real chance to earn a full paycheck from one job. And for a family living week to week, that matters. But more hours only matter if those hours are honored. That is why the amendment that was added to this bill with wage protection makes a difference. It says clearly, if you work, you get paid. No exceptions, because no one should ever have to choose between speaking up or keeping their job. And its core, this is about something simple. It's about respect. Respect for the work, respect for the time, and respect for people. And yes, we recognize the reality of our agriculture employers. These are hard industries, but we do not solve hard problems by ignoring one side. We solve them by showing up and doing the work and to find a balance. For me, this will always come back to people, to families. A parent missing dinner because they're working a second job, a child waiting at the table. I carry those moments with me because I live them. So this is what I believe. A full week of work should mean a full paycheck, and every hour worked should be honored. Colleagues, this is the choice in front of us. We can hold on to a system that sounds right, or we can acknowledge that for too many people, this isn't working. Because when someone works the hours and still cannot make ends meet, when they are stuck in that constant cycle of survival, this isn't policy. This is a failure we have the power to change. Before I close, I want to say this. We cannot be afraid of change when what we have is falling apart. I think about my family, what it would have meant if one job had just been enough. That is what this is about, not just the policy, but whether people get to live with dignity. Because at the end of the day, this is what I believe. Work should mean something. It should mean stability, it should mean dignity, and it should mean we can take care of the people that we love. And if we're standing here talking about overtime for almost any other profession, many of us would embrace it. So why should farm workers be different? They should not be. And colleagues, no matter how any of us vote today, my hope is this, that we are not judged simply by our vote, but how we show up, with heart, with integrity, with willingness to wrestle with something hard. Because if we have the chance, we move even one family out of survival and closer to stability, closer to dignity, and closer to a life where one job is enough, we shouldn't be afraid. We should be proud. And with that, members, I will be a yes vote today.
Assistant Minority Leader Winter.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, colleagues, for the time. I believe that this is what we're sent here to do, is we're sent to sit down and debate. And I think that on this bill, we did. I guess my biggest struggle with this is we've heard from workers on both sides of this. And it seems like the powers that be outside the glass are only willing to hold up or uphold one side of the voices, because I'll say my co-prime and I, we've listened to both sides of this. We've listened to both sides of the workers, and we've acknowledged a problem on both sides, but it seemed like the argument has only come from one side, and that's one side of the workers that don't like this. But we didn't hear any real debate from our colleagues acknowledging that the side of the workers that we had come testify in committee, that were on our side of this. And I guess that's the hardest part for me. Obviously, the workers aren't united in their views on this, and we're being talked to like they are. It almost seems like, whichever NGO decides who has the most juice is what side gets spoke for. I don't want to legislate that way. I expected to hear, we heard from all workers. I think my colleague and I did say that, and in committee we acknowledged that, and we did hear workers on both sides of this. And I guess that's what's frustrating is because not once was there an acknowledgement that there were workers that came to testify in favor of this bill. And I feel like at some point, and it does happen, I think that in politics, and I'm trying to find my words because I respect you all, I really do, and I think sometimes in politics, we overpromise and underdeliver, and we make promises that we hope can come true, but they're never really going to come true. But we keep striving for the greater good, and I have no problem doing that alongside all of you. The representative from Denver, she does come to my district. Many of you do, and I appreciate that about you all. But when people get up here and say, I'm the fifth removed son of a farmer and my grandpa owned a piece of ground 50 years ago, that isn't the same as living in it right now. You're disconnected from it, and to try to make that connection is patronizing to people that live it. Myself and the representative from the Valley live it. I guess that's what makes it difficult for me. And we're talking about a state issue, and national politics do matter when it comes to governing and state issues, but we're acting like the issues that farmers are facing today from national pressures is something new. Farmers and ranchers have been struggling for a long time. This isn't something new. This isn't something that one administration did. And I said it yesterday, I will not politicize this. I'm not in here to debate those things. I'm in here to debate the now. And we keep talking about farming and ranching as this massive industry as we pass legislation in this building that, on the other hand, funds other industries. We see it all the time in here. And another thing about this conversation that frustrated me is, as elected officials, our argument is to do our research. Our job is to do our research and make arguments and try to persuade one another. Shaming your own members, calling them out for their votes, their thoughts, their opinions, I'll never engage in that. And I saw that in this building. And that's not right. To try to put people on the spot for what they have to press that button for, I can never get with that. I'll never legislate that way. So just so you all know, my commitment to you is I will never come up to this well and shame you or make you feel like you've got to get in line because I think you need to. I respect every one of your votes. I said it yesterday and I'll say it again. The people of Colorado, They don't deserve rhetoric, they don't deserve theater, and they don't deserve campaign speeches every time we come down here, because this is the hard work we were sent to do. There will be plenty of time to do that when we leave this building in May. And I won't do that to you either. And another thing that I just can't stand for is that all farmers are thrown in this bucket of this corporate farmer that treats their workers so bad. I won't stand for that. And I'll argue with anybody about that fact, because the farmers and ranchers that I know, they're good to their people. The representative from the southwest corner explained, I mean, I grew up in this lifestyle. I wasn't going to share this, but in our property, as we were growing up, there's a section. So a migrant worker came to work, it would have been for my great-grandfather, became best of friends, loved a section, a piece of property, and owns it. His great-granddaughter's a lawyer in Denver now, and their name's on it. It's in the middle of our place because all those years of friendship mattered for something. And I think that those are the stories that get lost, because are there bad actors out there? Yeah, there is. There's bad actors out there. But we're not talking about them. And I'm afraid is that this is what that's going to create. Because there's no doubt the little farm is going under. And the corporate farms that you're all trying to fight and the little guys trying to fight is what's going to be created. It's fact. And then what? I mean, we have representatives that are fighting against so many things in here that tie directly to this. We hear about AI and mechanization, and that's what's going to come of this. We live in the Google area. You can search and see what they're doing in Asia right now when it comes to picking crops and when it comes to the way that they work in their orchards. It's here. And my statement wasn't untrue yesterday when I talked about minimum wage raising and kiosks showing up. That's how society is, that's how it's laid out. So we're trying to fight the big guy, but at the end of the day, it's going to fall on the back of the workers. Because we talk about what side of history are we going to stand on? Can I stand on the side of history that's going to kill the small farmer and rancher? Because that's what's being laid out here. You're either for the worker or you're for the fall, and we're trying to figure that out. And I mean, I appreciate all you and your respect for me and my colleague, but I mean, to say that you guys aren't this way, but you're running legislation that's based off of things, and I look at us as we've taken and we've wiped the board clean, and we're trying to find a way to thread the needle. And that's why I liked this debate, because this is what we should be doing every day instead of just running through here. This is the type of debates that are important because we're playing with people's lives. And they send us up here to do due diligence. And just dropping the gavel and dropping the gavel. I'm actually glad we did this bill, because you want to know what? Over the last 2 days, I've been honored to serve in this chamber because we've done the work of the people. We had real discussions and we had real debate. And there were some hard things said that who couldn't take personal? But you want to know what? I showed up today. I asked God to give me the strength. I stood next to my buddy, and we took this thing on. He's a good man. He's doing what's right for his district. Some may say otherwise, but I believe I'm a good man. I'll beat on my own chest a little bit, and I'm trying to do what's best for my district.
AML Winter, you have 1 minute remaining.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I urge you all to vote yes on this. I know it's a tough decision. It's hard to do. All I can tell you is I'm committed to working on this next year and the year after. But waiting 1 more year, is it 100 more farms? Is it 200 more farms? I don't know. Do we come back next year and it's 2 million acres? Do we come back next year and instead of 3,000 farms, it's 4,000 farms? That's not the side of history I want to stand on. So I'll be a yes today.
Representative Martinez.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's an honor to serve with you.
It is an honor to serve with you.
Members, agriculture depends on workers. Agriculture depends on workers. Over the last 5 years, we've seen growth in protections for agriculture workers that have been established in this state. We are one of only 4 states that have codified these protections into statute. And these are amazing things. From setting state minimum wage standards, which if anyone's asking, 15, 16 an hour here. So we are not affected by what's happening at the federal level. Establishing meal and rest breaks, overwork protection, prohibiting short-handled tools, and of course, the right to organize. This has also made farm work a competitive industry. Many farm workers' starting pay is above minimum wage, and in my area, between $20 and $22 an hour starting pay for the seasonal work, which if you do your math for 4 months is roughly about $20,000 in 4 months in that seasonal period. Many are offered vehicles for personal use, cell phones, bonuses, and housing as a part of their employment contracts. This shows that Colorado values farm workers and have valued them and have made massive strides in employment equitability since 2021. But a lot has occurred since then. We've seen historically low commodity pricing, rising operational cost in fuel, fertilizer, and equipment, tariffs, and of course, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the historically low snowpack that has led to a shortage of water in the San Luis Valley. All this requires pause and a call to evaluate the effectiveness of Senate Bill 87 in regards to overtime pay, and the data shows that farm workers are making less than what they did before that bill passed. I have the unique opportunity to represent both Latino farmers and ranchers and farm workers. I have Latino farmers and ranchers that have been working in this land since before Colorado was Colorado. I have generational farm workers that come back year after year after year, including their sons, their nieces, their nephews. Let me be clear. This bill is not about competing interests. When farm workers succeed, the farmers succeed. I want to talk a little bit about why this is so important and why I'm doubling down in this space. The other industries, we are losing farmland. In the San Luis Valley, in the last 10 years, we've removed 1/4 of our ag land out of production. It's never going back in. We don't have the water. We've invested $100 million of our own money to making sure that we have water sustainability, which means that already our farmers are growing less, which means that they're hiring less or not at all. Some of my Latino farmers and ranchers aren't even hiring anybody because they're working 2 jobs just to sustain and pay the taxes on their farmland. That's not beneficial to workers. These Latino farmers and ranchers that have been affected by this have survived. Their business has survived Spain, Mexico, New Mexico, and Colorado, and they're at risk of closing. Those voices matter too. Let me be clear how this is affecting. Working at multiple farms and ranches just to earn the same wages is neither fair nor equitable to the farm worker. These are the workers that I've heard from. And the intent of the overtime provision in Senate Bill 87 was intended to have farm workers earning more. And that's not happening, and the data shows that. The farm workers that came and testified in committee were not coerced. There were no bosses present. When I've talked to them, they did it under their own free will because they wanted to advocate for themselves and their colleagues. What do we risk if we do nothing? I argue you're going to get corporate farms that are going to buy up this land, at best. They're not going to give a damn about their workers because it's all going to be about the bottom line. What do we have here? 80% of our farms that are owned in Colorado are family-owned farms today. If you do nothing, that's where you're pushing the industry to. I was told yesterday that I did not accept amendment, or I heard on the mic I did not accept an amendment that was going to be directly feeding into farmers to help them out. We did the math. It's about $2,800 for every farmer. That's not enough to cover the diesel overage costs that have been here, including for a month, let alone to really make a difference. And why is that? Here's the data. 2 years ago, the city of Aurora saw a farmland that was failing, and in Otero County, and they purchased that farmland. And does anyone want to take a guess at what that cost was? Oh, that's okay, I got it right here. $80 million just for their water rights. $80 million as a public entity, a public entity that made that purchase, to purchase up water rights in Otero County to have it pumped up here. We're not even talking about the water developers that are coming after the water in my neck of the woods, because they're a private equity firm and they have more money and they don't have the restrictions that they do. So we don't have that kind of money in the state to be able to making sure that these are protected. And the other bit to it, we have been trying our best to figure out how to subsidize the farmers with what we have. Agrovoltaics, being able to lease out land to being able to help them out and cover some of these overage costs. And this is a little outside, so right after I'll say back to the bill, Madam Speaker, but we do not see the investment in rural Colorado. $100 million for a mile to get a transmission line to get that solar energy out? No, it's too much. Oh, it's too expensive. Oh, you have a couple passes. Oh, we can't really put that investment in now. But we'll sure be okay with it when your water's taken for front range development. That is the reality that we're facing. You have all of these things that can be true in the same space. And I will never apologize for coming and fighting for my district, because these are the realities that we face. It is a hard balance. In 2021, we took a positive step in solidifying protections for workers. And we now have a level of responsibility to adjust when it is not working. They aren't having these conversations in Texas, Montana, and Florida, even though they're dealing with the same things that we've been talking about the last couple days, because they don't have the same standards that we do. They're paying their workers $7 an hour. They're at risk of losing or seeing the tank in the market from the federal government because there even been more fluctuation. But they're paying their workers less, and there's no protections for those workers. This is why we were elected. We have to make the tough decisions for Colorado. And I have been and always have been committed to improving wage theft for ag workers. That's why I ran the amendment. And if there are any other improvements on that, I am happy to have those conversations. Life happens outside of the metro area. And that life matters. As this debate has shown, I will fight like hell no matter what issue it is to make sure that my people in my area are taken care of. Senate Bill 121 is an attempt to make the best out of the situation that we find ourselves in. And I hope that you would be willing to have the same fight if your district was in crisis. Vote your conscience, vote your district, and don't forget about rural Colorado.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 121 on third reading and final passage. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representative Valdez, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Valdez votes yes. Representative Lindsay, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Lindsay votes no. Representative Rutenell, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Rutenell votes no. Representative Weinberg, how do you vote?
Yes, ma'am.
Representative Weinberg votes yes. I think that was it. Please close the machine. With 33 aye, 32 no, and 0 excused, Senate Bill 121 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Representative Weinberg, co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Members, announcements and introductions. Actually, Representative Lukens, let me start, and then we'll have you go. Members, our custom and practice is to have, upon adjournment, committee meetings start, and then 1:30 committee meetings begin after those committee meetings have ended. We have a very long, large list of witnesses today in our upon adjournment committee. So pursuant to House Rule 25J1B, and given agreement with the minority leadership and membership substitutions made, we will have Education Committee start meeting at 1:30 p.m. today, even if Finance Committee is still underway. Representative Lukens.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The House Education Committee will be meeting at 1:30 in room 107. No matter what, we will start at exactly 1:30.
Representative Gonzalez.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, today is World Semicolon Day. For those that don't know, it was started back in 2013 to commemorate people who, despite tough times, decided to continue to prevail. So I have been very vocal about suicide awareness and prevention and the warning signs. So today I drew a little semicolon on my wrist to commemorate that. I've had a lot of friends, I'm sure you have too, that you hear who have maybe contemplated self-harm, or just in the world we live in today with depression and anxiety, it's a very cold world, and so it's okay to talk to somebody. It's okay to break the stigma. We have a lot of work to do in this space, and so I encourage you all to, my call to action to all of you is just reach out to somebody who may be troubled. I'm here to talk to any one of you. I respect all of you, and so I know sometimes we have things that we keep bottled up, and it's okay to talk to somebody. So on World Semicolon Day, it gets better, and I'm glad you're here, and I appreciate everybody. I think we've got to break the stigma, especially when it comes to mental health. So World Semicolon Day is April 16th.
Thank you, Representative. Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move to lay over the balance of the calendar to Friday, April 17th, 2026.
Seeing no objection, the balance of the calendar will be laid over until tomorrow. Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move the House stand in recess until later today.
The House will stand in recess until later today.